I know it's wrong.
What the hell?
Or as I cook, I
Oh,
do
I
dishes,
know
and
it's wrong.
immediately after I'm done eating,
Okay,
I
did I
go
fix
and do
it?
the dishes, and then I immediately put them away.
I think
And
I fixed it. Did I fix it? Wait. Yes, I fixed it. Yes.
yeah,
Everyone can
there
hear
we go.
things. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
hear
All
that
right.
in the stream.
I have like 800 output possibilities, and I was trying to pick the right one, and it wasn't working. And so we got there.
Hey,
Okay.
All right.
Lilith, for your drying rack, is there the drying rack you put in your cabinet, does it have a like spot that the water actually
Capture
drains
thing
into?
underneath.
Yeah.
So it should. It technically doesn't right now, but it's also not like an issue right now either. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I bought
Okay.
an object
I just meant be
for
careful for that.
fix it. Yeah, yeah, of course.
You don't want
And
wood
sure.
cabinets getting damaged or something weird.
So then something I've been an idea, a possible technology I've been working on is the idea of the like the project motivation loop, where every specific smaller project, and I use the term project instead of task or goal. I use project because it's building
That
language.
works.
Um,
Yep.
but so I realized that there is an project that every other project is part of it. Which is the only thing you'll ever do is build your life as best you're able. And so each day you're building your day as best you're able. And each of your projects is for improving some aspect of your life. And then I've used the symbol of an Ouroboros, but you can also use the same symbol to be just like a circle with an arrow on part of it to say like it's looping. Or you could just think of it as a wheel or a crank or whatever, like it's your motivation loop. And so you could apply whatever specific metaphor would speak most to you about a circle, which like you can make millions of different specific metaphors there. But now I try to insert that loop into my modeling of reality at every level. So when I zoom into thinking about a specific project, I always try to keep an awareness of the whole point of this project is that it's part of my project. It's all about this continual motivational movement towards building my life.
Mm.
And my hope is that by doing this and building more tools around this idea, I can reduce the amount of issues I run into with autistic inertia and task switching difficulty, because everything is modeled as part of a singular task, like the single greater task. And I'm still working out the specific way to like build a relationship with time that works with this idea, but it is something I'm actively working on as well.
Great. I love this. This is good. This is super good. I've been reading The Sane Society, and that's been kind of like a little bit of anchor. And then the other anchor, what was the other anchor? I had another one. Oh, yes. So I thought about one. Okay, so it's interesting because, oh, by the way, in the chat on Twitch, Jamie is working with their kind of theory of everything, and how they are actually using oppression as their oppression, I guess, and what was the opposite that you had? Anyways, oppression and living freedom and oppression. So they basically, that's how they're directing their behavior now, which is very interesting. The one that I started working on, I drew a picture of this. Maybe I can put it in the chat. Maybe I should. Let me grab my notebook. And it might be why we like certain games, but okay. So all right, RPGs, you get your little character and you have little like inventory slots. And I'm like, oh, I have inventory slots. So instead of like reorient to self-actualization, because like, that's a map and arriving metaphor. I'm exchanging A for B, right? Which nicely works out because we have arriving building, haha. But I'm swapping. I'm already holding something, and I need to put it down and pick up a different thing. And with an autistic brain, I'm like, we're always already holding something because we're trying to build as our compensatory mechanism. So then I need to ask, like, well, wait, what am I holding? And then I can put that down and pick something else up. And usually it might even be a model that we're holding. And I'm like, well, I think I need to pick up a different one. So I'm going to take a quick picture of this and put it in the chat about what I was doing while I was sitting in the emergency vet with my dog.
Interesting. So part of what I've been working on with those things I was talking about was the idea that I need to build a fractal nature into my models so that the way a fractal works is whatever level of zoom you're in, it still has the same overall shape. So like a fractalized model would always have the model of the model as part of it. And so then I could always be seeing the motivation loop, right? Like that's sort of the shape that I want to bring in.
Yes. Oh, this looks really weird. I'm gonna have to make this bigger. Okay, that's fine.
To self-actualization. Interesting.
I'm gonna fix this on everything.
So even like that top sentence fragment or phrase, right? Reorient to self-actualization. That is absolutely the exact same things that I am trying to talk about in this language I'm creating with the motivation loop that I'm talking about.
So I think I copied you when I did that.
So like using the mini map, like the terminology from a video game of a mini map, my idea is to make you the phrase you want to reorient your self-actualization into a mini map that you're always holding as part of your model of reality, no matter what specific project you're looking at, no matter what specific focus on reality you have.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And then I was like, well, I think autistic is interesting because it does mean like a self-focus, like a focus on the self. And then I was like, well, what if what they were picking up was the fact that we're hyper conscious of ourselves as the location point, like the local featural. We're aware where we are, but we don't know where anything else is because that's what's broken is the global configurational. So we seem like we're self-focused or self-oriented because we can't orient ourselves with the other stuff, and that's what's been kind of lost. So then where I ended up, what I did was I was like, well, what if I was more self-focused? But I realized that like my mind, so I did mind, eyes, voice, stomach, hands, legs. So if my legs are somewhere, then I have moved my body there. Like I'm standing in my stream room. If my legs go for a bit and I just kind of point my eyes in a direction and say, go legs, I will end up in a different place. But my eyes are taking in something, and then that's how I'm directing myself, is that my eyes have to see what it is. And for us, that scene is very weird because we don't have the global configurational. So we can't just look at a place in space and then go to that in the same sense. So I'm trying then to say, well, where am I right now? So if and then say, well, where would I like to be instead? Becomes like, what objects would I rather have under my feet? Or what objects would I rather have in my hands? What objects would I rather have in my stomach? What objects would I rather have coming off of my vocal cords? What objects would I rather have in my eye line? And what objects would I rather have in my mind? So I assume I already have an object because I'm autistic and I'm clinging for dear life onto whatever I can touch. And that I need to put that down and then pick up something else.
Right. That's interesting to me because it brings to mind an idea I had as well, which is like that it might be a good tool for people with alexithymia to create, I guess the quickest language would be like a voodoo doll of yourself. So like you pick a name out for a person, and then talk to yourself about facts about this person, and the person represents you without you looking at this as a self and thus using that part of the brain. And so you could say,
Yeah.
like, right, like if I use the name Bunny, I'm like, well, Bunny hasn't eaten anything today, and that's not good for Bunny. And I know Bunny likes to eat these kinds of things at this time, usually. And I know that in Bunny's house, these foods exist. So maybe I'll go make some food for Bunny to eat. And then after I've made the food, then I eat the food instead. Right? It's sort of like super imposition, because for people who find it easier to sort of model their own needs and temporality, like their relationship with time, while imposing that onto the model of a different person. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You followed what I was
That
saying.
does.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's a thing where like I haven't figured out how to actually implement it, but it does certainly seem to have like the core of a useful idea there.
Yes, right. Well, and then if you test implementing it, it's tricky too, because like I think that's the hard thing too is for autistic people is we probably need to implement it on ourselves first, because we have so many barriers, barriers to functioning currently, that it's difficult to be confident in an idea until you've seen if it works. But it's tricky too because we need to start sharing it too. But at least that gives you enough to go off of, because like the problem is that we're inventing the language as we're doing the thing, so it's really hard to track that and do it
Well, that's the
simultaneously.
value to me of very specifically this group get together thing that we do, right? The HCAT this is the place where we talk about the systems that we're building as we're building them, and the way the testing is going.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm going to be moving books up and down, so if anybody's in a chat anywhere, I'm probably not going to notice them, but so far so good. Also, like TikTok is just so not about this. It's so interesting. I thought more people would be like, yeah, this is cool. Definitely. Or maybe I don't know how the TikTok live thing works, like who it suggests you to or not, but definitely doesn't suggest us to anybody who wants to be here. It's terrible at that. But then again, whatever.
Because like, I didn't know TikTok has live, and my understanding of TikTok in general is that it's very short form content, which this is the opposite of, insofar as opposite, but like this is very different than short form content.
Yeah, it's probably not what they're into
in fact,
at all.
Each of these several hour streams that we do is actually a continuation of the project of all of the streams. Right?
Yeah.
This is actually the continuation of a 4-year-old project that we've been working on.
This is the longest form you can get.
Yeah.
Besides some of the like really long podcast stuff I listen to, this is basically the longest. I listen to some very long form podcast stuff on a daily basis. Like some of these episodes are 5 hours long and they have like 2,000 episodes. It's nuts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I do during my work is listen to very long podcasts. As long as people leave me alone.
A mouse ate one of my drawings, and I'm a little pissed. We've had to deal with mice, and I think we're in a good place now, but very annoying. Okay.
The real negative of being allergic to cats is not being able to have mice prevented. I've never had a mouse problem. I have 4 cats. Like
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess
maybe we just do it anyway.
I guess feed an outside cat. Like feed an outside cat. I'll keep them away.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
If you have like a stray,
we used to have cats in the neighborhood. Yeah, we used to have more strays. Maybe we need more stray cats. Like, can somebody unleash some stray cats here? Like from, you know what I mean?
I mean,
like they catch them and they just let them out here.
Well, yeah, because like people have barn cats that basically they can't socialize in certain areas here. Like they just
Yeah.
don't want to be socialized, so people will have them in those kind of environments. So I imagine you definitely could. It'd be a good spot
Hold on, I
for
go
a
off my
cat
Wi-Fi.
that can't come in.
Shitty. Okay, I'm off the Wi-Fi. Maybe I was like, what if America's infrastructure is enough that there's a bunch of stray cats all over the neighborhood? That'd be great.
I mean, you say that, but like that must be just a
No?
California thing that you guys don't have that, because like stray
We
cats
don't.
are just a part of life everywhere I've ever lived.
Yeah, no, we don't really have them.
Which honestly is a good thing. That means California has more of their shit together when it comes to cat overpopulation.
Yeah, we're good on cats. That's how we should
Yeah,
advertise ourselves.
apparently.
California, good on cats.
Just saying, like, yeah, I have stray cat friends that Lilith has seen pictures of around here. Like, these are friendly cats that I can actually hold. Even.
Oh, nice.
But I can't take in like
There were
12 cats, you
when I
know?
was a kid, but yeah. No, totally. You don't want to do that. That's a whole other new problem.
If I had a big enough space, I would. Like, truly.
Right. It's not for, like not for wanting to, but for the practical reasons you shouldn't want to. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't understand. I would.
It's not desire.
Jay knows I would.
Happen.
He has to be the logical one in terms of keeping me from taking in way too many.
So actually, like my gray cat is starting to pee around the house again. So I do Shadow want to look into getting that cat to you. So on the topic of you getting a new cat.
Yeah, she I kind of figured that would happen again.
Yeah.
Truthfully. Oh, poor old cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, get her a rabies shot. Basically.
Yeah. Well, we could
I
work
think
out
my
the specific action plan off stream.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Just stuff is covered in cat hair. So let's clean that off.
I know that feeling.
I'm unmonster cornering my tool storage area, which like there's big bins that were just full of random stuff for probably at least a year. So lots of accumulated dust bunnies and stuff like that to solve.
Yeah, it happens.
Okay, alrighty. So let's figure out. Okay, is there a topic for today? I kind of wanted
Do we
to talk
need it?
about whatever.
Yeah, do we need a topic
We
other
don't
than
need
like
it.
actually doing HCAT things? Like the topic
Yeah,
can
we
be like
could.
actual how to arrange your habitat more easily, or
Yeah,
what you do in your habitat.
yeah, we could do that.
Because
I'm working on a
I
bookshelf thing.
oh sure, I often talk about like the powers of being a craft person, that this so-called do-it-yourself of like building things, but
Mm-hmm.
also I see the converse where not being a person like this would free up a whole bunch of space and also a whole bunch of like
Yeah.
effort and time investment, right?
Yeah.
Where like I
Which is
guess
like
if I
why I
had
think we go extreme. Minimalism is one thing that happens with us.
Mhm. Right, but I think because of who I am, which like I'm effectively an inventor, I don't have that option. But
Yep.
I just like want to acknowledge the fact that there is very much a time and space investment, right? Because there's so many things that if I were like my own client in how to arrange a habitat, I'd be saying, throw that out right now. But I have to be like, well, no, I need to keep this in one of my boxes of objects to possibly turn into different objects.
I had a thing in chat. If people also want to look at this in the Twitch chat, Jamie was asking about, I think specifically maybe like, can anyone help me construct a list of social etiquette rules that could help me in my daily life? So I read a bunch of those books. There's one author that writes a bunch of them, and it's her last name's like Lowell or something like that. I'll go grab it. You could read her books. They were helpful when I was younger and trying to figure out stuff, because she kind of listifies it a little bit. So you could try that. I wouldn't recommend asking other autistics for that because we don't fucking know what we're talking about. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know for the best space for that.
yeah, I stopped, and I will say I stopped using these at some point once I learned performing arts skills and just started to do something different with my model. So I will say that, but I probably still know some of these things, like walking into a room and thinking to yourself, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you're here. I know that I know. It's just like projecting competence towards people because you actually are competent is important. But her last name is, let me get it, Lowndes, Lowndes. She has How to Be a People Magnet, How to Make Anyone Fall in Love with You. That one's kind of silly. How to, where's the other ones? Goodbye to Shy. She's written so many. How to Talk to Anyone. That's a good one. How to Talk to Anyone. It's a thicker one. It's a yellow book if you find it on Amazon. I've highlighted and underlined stuff. So I maybe read that book. I probably should reread it maybe, but I don't know. I kind of gave up because it is a little mentally exhausting also to try to do this. I started to just not care at some point. So you might also start to not care at some point, but How to Talk to Anyone, 92 Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships. Probably that one would be good, but anything from her would be good. She also wrote How to Create Chemistry with Anyone. I own all of these, so I have like 6 of her books. And I'm semi-functional, so it might have helped. But yeah, her name is Leil, Leil, Lowndes. I would read her stuff because she's not autistic and probably boils it down enough. And if I'm missing something else in the chat that I should have addressed instead, let me know. But that was the thing that was the question. So it's like when you respond to the question. So that's what I think from somebody who like read those books and a whole bunch of other books. Did someone recommend the book What I Mean When I Say I'm Autistic? I've heard of that book. I haven't read it.
Jamie made an interesting point where he said dishes is oppression because you're trapped while doing them. The bigger the pile, the longer the oppression needed to maintain. So if you include washing them as part of your meal ritual, you'll reduce noticeable oppression, right? And like I wouldn't use the term oppression, but I completely understand. Like it's a reduction of autonomy or removal. Like it feels
Right.
like a removal from autonomy.
And the reason you wouldn't use that is it's too hyperbolic, even though if that works for like an overarching model, like for use, do it. But I have enough social wherewithal that like if you say that to the wrong person, they're gonna get really pissed at you. Because oppression is supposed to be addressing something much more devastating than dishes.
Right. But at the same time, right, like if someone argued about that, but it was the kind of person that you and I are, Jane, right? People who actually are happy to engage with the ideas, I would say there has to be some real overlap between these ideas because, right, like having to do your dishes, having to maintain your physical reality is something that is harder for those oppressed and so much easier for those who are privileged. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And they don't even have to do it. They oppress somebody else to do it. So I get that.
Exactly.
But yeah. But you could definitely get somebody who's like, don't use that word. Yeah. But I totally get what you're doing. I totally get what you're doing. But just like I'm only doing that because like sometimes I'm like, just be careful.
Right.
Sometimes
well actually Jane, you're kind of answering part of that question Jamie was asking about like social etiquette and stuff, right?
Yeah,
like part of
I
social
wouldn't do that.
is not to go around using the word oppression particularly trivially or whatever.
And
'cause it's
some
one of the
and you have to
words.
be mindful that like it's now a trigger word for MAGA cult members. So if you use oppression, they're gonna lose their fucking minds because they think that's DEI or whatever. Like, you know, so they'll go off into a cult fugue state. So just it's very interesting though. So but yeah, because they talk about the oppression Olympics and you know what I mean. So you got to be careful about some of the social contexts that people will distort what you say. Not that I'm distorting what you say, so I don't need to feel too defensive, but the defensiveness you might feel if I bring that up, like that's what I want you to be mindful of. That still get some people who try to put you into super defensive mode because they're looking for a scapegoat.
My local library has a copy of what I mean when I say I'm autistic. I'm puzzling a
Awesome.
life on the autistic spectrum. So I'm going to place a hold on that and read that later.
Yeah.
Thanks
Well,
for the
MAGA goes
recommendation.
into the oppression umbrella term, but MAGA hates the oppression terminology, like they're allergic to it. Like they break out in hives when they hear the word oppression. They break out in hives.
Right, and that's, you know, going back to when I was spending more time in the memetics wording and thinking about memetics. That's what they were calling a meme allergy, right?
Right.
Like the people have developed an intolerance to the meme of oppression that causes them to sort of react in an unusually extreme manner when they're
Yeah.
exposed to it.
Yeah, and not even like the concept, just literally the word.
Right, or even things that remind them of the word.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I don't think they can handle
And
anything that starts with OPP.
right, and so then like this meme allergy has been indoctrinated into them as part of a cult, so that the cult's leaders can paint anything they want with that meme allergen, and thus activate all of their followers into attacking that thing, whatever it is, right? And so now they go out and like, this is DEI to literally anything they want, and then all the mega members are like, we have to destroy this now.
Yeah. What do you think of Jamie's latest comment, Lilith? I'm curious what you think.
Not using someone's preferred pronouns is an example of an oppression that we're doing onto them, not allowing respect their expression. Well, so my personal interpretation of pronouns is that there is no reason not to use, at the very least, she, her, he, him, or they, them pronouns for somebody. Because like, even if you're against sort of like including transgender women in your category of womanhood, because you're a staunch feminist and you think it will damage your ability to do feminism, I don't think pronouns have to be attached to that, right?
Right.
Like, like actual nouns, or like the name you pick, you automatically you have to respect people's name, unless, well, no, there's nothing there's nothing that is actually true.
There's no automatic, because there's still
Because somebody
context,
could
right?
name
Like
themselves, someone can name themselves slur the slur, right? And then you're like,
or
no,
they
I
could
won't
name
respect
they could do identity theft and name
Sure,
themselves
that
somebody
too.
else's name.
So
You
there's
don't
no,
have to do that. You
but
see me?
generally,
Yeah.
very generally speaking, you have to acknowledge people's names. I think you have to acknowledge their pronouns as well if you don't want to be at minimum an asshole, right? Because I think like there is oppression against trans people, but I think it needs, I think there's a lot of framing around it that I haven't done yet. So I can't talk about it to the level in which I'd want to, right?
And so yeah, it's so there's people that would I need to, there's people that would disagree with that entire framing, and that's what's so interesting about that. That's not a good example. Like I would say, Jamie, that's not a very clean example. If you were trying to get something that's like a concrete example of what you're talking about abstractly, that one's not a very clean example, actually. But it is in terms of like, getting along with people, that's maybe clearer if your goal is to get along with people, that you will need to do that most of the time. And I think there's even some people where that won't be a barrier to getting along with them, but most people will say that's a barrier, you have to do this to get along with me. But that if you say like binaries are oppressive, that's very not unpacked, and that's not a good way to take that abstract concept and apply it to something specific, because then like what do you do about languages that have no pronouns, because there's a bunch of them. So are those people continuously oppressed because they don't get to select a pronoun? You know what I mean? Like it's not a clean example. So I wouldn't use that one, and it actually like it obfuscates what people are talking about when they do need to talk about that, in my opinion.
And like the issue of trans people is in a way just the part of the bigger issue that sticks out the most, and so it's getting the most attention because it is wrapped just like irremovably. It's all just part of gender policing, period, and the fact that we have sex classes, period.
So
that's why there's an issue. Because if we lived in a world where there weren't, male and female sex classes, and there weren't gender roles being policed onto people, then trans people would just do whatever they want to do, and no one would say anything about it. Because
so you could say conformity is potentially very oppressive. Conformity, not because that's the actual problem there, is conforming and forcing people to conform to something that's externally enforced by an authority. In case of something like that, it's an anonymous authority, and right now in the United States they're trying to make it an explicit authority. So you have an authority figure, that's the problem. And if you have oppression, there needs to be an authority oppressing you. So then, do you see how my breakdown like is a little bit more successful? Maybe not the most successful, but it gets you out of, you don't want to mess this up, because people right now are going to be attacked or attacking other people without knowing what the argument is, and because people are in extreme lack. So they're scapegoating each other, and some people are in a cult because of this extreme lack, because we don't have the resources we should have to develop ourselves as people. And so people will conform in response to that. I would highly recommend, if you have the bandwidth for it, starting to read The Sane Society. Parts of it are garbage, so maybe it's not a good idea actually, but like you have to be able to throw out all of the Freudian shit. Like I had to skip an entire chunk of it because I'm like, well, this is just Freudian bullshit. But he's critical of Freud, but not enough for 1955.
Right. When we're recommending things to people, I don't know if we should be recommending the kind of things we would recommend to each other, where we're like, there's a nugget here, but a lot of it is needs to be thrown out.
You can't lead with loaded language. So you can't say the fact that they choose not to respect. Are you sure that they're choosing not to respect? Do you see how that's already morally loaded? So you've already told me why they don't do it. They have the lack of respect of other people. That's the only possible reason that could happen. And I realize that's not the only possible reason that could happen. So, and you can't mind read people's intentions. And also, I don't think that I don't know where it's coming from. I actually reject that model specifically, but you can use it. I'm just saying it's a little bit, I wouldn't, if I were you, because it's not the strongest argument for what you're trying to argue for one, and for two, we're in a mess of bullshit right now. You just can't have a weak argument against this. Like it's just, that's not okay. So it's a friendly critique that I don't think that's the strongest argument, but you can use it. But if you say it to me a bunch of times, I'm going to keep telling you I don't think it's a strong argument. So like that's just going to keep happening. So I need to say that.
So like even in that phrase, choosing not to respect other people's pronouns, like I highlighted with like, what does the word respect mean? Because it seems like one of the, I don't know, flimsier words. Like, Jane, I don't know if you remember that time I was on a stream with like drunk political people, and the dude like took me off stream because I was crying, and then argued that he did it out of respect for me.
Disgusting.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say, like, I don't consider what you did respectful. He's like, well, that doesn't matter what you like. It's respectful whether you like it or not.
Conformity.
Right?
He says, you're not conforming. It's bad to not conform. Because I think it's bad to not conform, I'm going to throw you out. And you think it's bad to conform. I think it's a bad, like you see the harm in conforming, and he sees the value in conforming.
I had the mindset that I want to cry in public because there's a value in not conforming to what I consider inappropriate standards, such as never crying in public. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah. So and then if you're going to impose like a moral framework, like of right and wrong, or just a framework of right and wrong, you better be able to defend it all the fucking way, or else, in my opinion, don't propose it. Because right now it's so polarized. So that's where I'm coming from with that. Is that you gotta be conscious of that. And like you can not have my critique as like one that you want to onboard, but I will say if that comes up again and again and again, I will keep having to correct it because this is a mess and it's not going to get better if we don't unpack this and say like a different framework entirely. So I'm not saying yours is a poor framework in all circumstances. I'm saying I think that it's much that's I wouldn't go there because then I'm going to be here for like 2 more hours having to unpack that, and I don't want to do it. Like I don't think, and it's dangerous for me because I'm a woman. So if some people who don't have this level of interest in clarifying it want to go after me, they will. So it's just I'd rather not. Like if that's okay. Like if we could use a different example, because I'm saying that example is not actually as clean as you think it is. But it's just like use another example. That's all I'm saying. While I'm here, because it's again, like we're talking about intersections of oppression. Like I'm managing my oppression as a woman, so don't necessarily do that one because there's a lot of issues with it.
As Jane's number 2 in this stream, I'm going to specifically say we're going to move away from talking about this specific example now, because we don't. That's not what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to do HCAT right now.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah. So
no, on the topic of feminism.
If you use, well,
no,
can I add? Well, on the topic of feminism, but like, so the embodiment. Let's talk about that. If you use the oppression model, you will start to feel you are oppressed by your own body. That is not good. Like, because you have to eat, you have to poop, you have to shit. What you have are responsibilities, and your responsibilities should be met by your environment. When they are not met by your environment, you're living in an inhumane environment. And inhumane conditions can produce things that we might rightfully call oppression, where somebody exploits that inhumaneness. However, there are some things that you're just going to have to take care of as a human being, and that's not a bad thing. Like the reason why you have to clean your dishes is because if you don't and you try to eat with them again, you can give yourself a deadly pathogen. Like you can't.
Right.
This is self-care, and
right.
If dishes are a poor system to get food into your mouth, then that's a societal-wide problem. But it's not designed to oppress you. It's not somebody explicitly trying to manipulate and exploit the fact that the humane conditions aren't quite there yet.
Right. And it's also that framework is sort of antithetical to one that I'm trying to build and internalize and then teach to people based off of the 7-day mental diet, which is one of sort of like an extreme intentional positivity, where one of the things that you do as part of it is you reclaim your power and stop using the language of powerlessness. Right. So you can talk about like doing your dishes. You are in charge of this. You don't have to do them. You can just not do them. And so if you're talking about having to do the dishes, no, you don't. What you're actually talking about is that you have chosen to value having these dishes done highly. And through that choice, you then have to act on that choice to make your choice manifest in the world around you. And you either are choosing to do that or you're not. Right. And this way you get to take the power back. Right. And you could say, I don't have the capacity right now to do the choice I want, which is to clean my dishes. But it's up to you. Right. It's the same way, like I struggle to clean the cat litter, but it's my decision because I don't want the consequences of not cleaning it. Therefore, I want to clean it no matter how much I dislike it. It is still I want to do this thing that I dislike doing.
Yeah, and that's where as human beings we have to self-regulate, co-regulate, and we also have to regulate dependent people like children and elderly and people with extreme disability that means they can't do things physically or mentally, or like from their mind or from their limbs. So we do that, and that work is hidden in our society because it's traditionally been dumped on women. So it produces value in society, like it's trillions of dollars every year, that work, right? And you don't get acknowledged for it, so you don't acknowledge it in yourself. Like our society hasn't understood that as like a healthy, normal thing, that you have needs, and those needs need to be regulated. And so the problem with if you put everything to freedom and oppression, you're not going to be able to distinguish. This is also in Eric Fromm's book, like freedom to do something or freedom from oppression. Like we want freedom to do things that are good and healthy, but those things are still metabolically expensive, can be exhausting, they can be painful, they can be confusing, they can have all of these metabolic states that are very unpleasant, extremely unpleasant, extremely unpleasant. However, we want freedom to do that, and what we also want is freedom from these things. The problem is that we have some freedom from. So then when you have like the right wing run in or whatever, they're the people brainwashed by cults at this point. They're like, you're saying you don't have enough freedom from these bad things. Oh, hello. Yeah.
Hi.
I was saying like, oh, we have freedom. Hello. Yes. Can you hear me? Why am I breaking up?
Yeah, I
For a
can
while
hear
you were breaking up pretty bad.
Oh, that sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me put myself on Wi-Fi for a second. Am I?
Sure. I was wondering if you like had moved particularly far or.
Not really. I mean, I took myself off Wi-Fi to go upstairs. Maybe I don't know why they did that. Well, okay. Well, I might have to do a different headset. But freedom. Well, maybe should I plug it in? Maybe I'll plug it in. Freedom from versus freedom to is what Eric Fromm talks about that I was just reading. So, like in our society, and this is what gets thrown in your face by right wingers, you have a certain amount of freedom from dangerous, hostile, bad things, right? And things that are not conducive to life. But you don't have freedom to regulate and take care of yourself and take care of other people and their actual needs. So the problem that we currently have is that like there is not enough freedom to do things, but you have sufficient freedom from things that people can throw that in your face and say you ungrateful bitch. Like so yeah, so if you use the freedom oppression thing, you have another problem there because I don't think that's abstracted enough as well. So I like now that I'm like maybe I should critique this because it's relevant to what I'm reading, but also then that gets into this idea of like why we're having a hard time is that we're not able to make things better that we can feel we would like to take actions on because the actions are not accessible to take because we've made it such that rich people can buy them who don't have any concern about what that action does or doesn't do because it means nothing to them. And then the person that would mean everything to can't get it. So we have freedom from, but not freedom to, and the freedom from is now evaporating because people didn't want that either for us. Did I break apart or am I here?
Yeah, so I'm not going to be on voice for a bit as I focus on putting food inside myself.
That's good.
Yeah, you were good that time. It didn't break up that
Okay.
time.
How weird. How weird. I wonder what went wrong.
I have no idea, but that part was fine.
But yeah. So it's an interesting set of things. I also realized I can't plug my phone in because I need to get a different converter now. I had like a converter for an iPhone to a headset cord, and now I need a different one because I have a newer iPhone and it has the USB-C that they finally had to legally put in.
Yeah, it's almost like they're finally on the same charger as the rest of us.
God, right? It's ridiculous. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna try to turn off the Wi-Fi, go upstairs, and hopefully it's okay. Actually, wait, before I do this, dog, is he all right? Oh, he's so snoozy. My dog has to go get his elbow revisioned a little bit because his pin is poking into one of his soft tissue bodies. They didn't tell me which one, but soft tissue something.
So he did
He
get
can't use
surgery
it properly.
in general.
So he's gonna get, yeah. So he had surgery on his elbow for fusion, and it's going okay, but he wasn't using it that much. And then he had something where I thought maybe he dislocated his shoulder because he wouldn't put weight on it in the middle of the walk, laid down, wouldn't let me pick him up without trying to bite me. So they did x-rays, and one screw is loose and there's some fluid around it, which is just kind of an inflammatory response, but they checked to see if it was infected, and it's not, which is good.
Yeah, that is very good.
Then also there's a pin. Yeah, so I think they're gonna have to take the screw probably. I don't take it out. Maybe they can, but they either tighten the screw, replace the screw, and they take the pin out, because a lot of times that's the same thing with humans.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they do anything that like is the
So
and that revision is
mhm.
pretty similar. Like if I don't know about the screw, but taking pins out is usually arthroscopic, so it's not a big open crazy one.
So is
Go ahead.
his so one, I got the main idea of what you said, but it did break up again. But
Damn
two, are his pins like on the outside? Like is this an outside fixator kind of situation, or?
Oh no, yeah, no, it's internal. It's internal.
Okay,
So
because pins can
what
be
they
both.
did was yeah, it's internal.
Okay, because I have screws inside of me, but I don't have pins.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah,
Poor dog.
I know. He's been through enough, I think. Good boy though. He's a really good boy though. He's a little tough guy. I love you,
it sounds
Rowan.
like he's doing
Aw.
the best he can, given it.
Yeah, he is. He is. And I've got some anti-inflammatory medication, and I'm going back to UC Davis on Wednesday. That's who did the original surgery. And
Okay.
they want to move fast on it, so it's possible that like that's the surgery consult, and he's in for surgery Thursday or Friday.
Is it like the UC Davis, because I know UC Davis has a vet school in it.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
It's really good. So it's their whole vet school teaching hospital, cutting
Yeah.
edge everything. The only person that could do this surgery was over there, basically, because it's so complex and he's so tiny.
Yeah, when I was growing up and until like sophomore year of college, that was my dream vet school, was over there. So like
Yeah.
I am well aware of the fact that it exists.
That's awesome. That's right.
Yeah, weird small world. When I hear about it sometimes.
Cool.
So I'm glad that at least the surgery mostly worked out.
Yeah, mostly. I think it was tricky because he has his elbows are deformed in a way that he's like one of one. So trying to do a predictable thing with this was not really in the cards. They felt pretty confident. They did like they showed me they did a 3D printout of what the joint angle would be, and like we're trying to figure out the ergonomics of it. So kind of neat. But
That is cool.
yeah, he a larger dog. They might have done something called TER, like total elbow replacement, but he's just too tiny. Like I'd have to be a billionaire and still would maybe fail.
He's a small dog.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
So yeah, so that's also why my sleep schedule is messed up, and I drew that thing that's in the chat because we went to one place for like 3 hours and they couldn't get us in, and then we drove all the way like 50 minutes or 45 minutes away, something like that. Well, it's like 30, but 45 from my house, to go to a different one that had no wait time and was actually phenomenal. They were awesome. So that was good. Now let me give you a little bit of that. You need that. Yes. Okay, ready? Okay. Kind of tasty, huh? Yeah, kind of tasty. He likes the Metacam they gave him this time.
Well,
you like that flavor?
Surprise.
Yeah, that flavor is good. Yeah, some of them are tasty. They try to make them taste like chicken and fish and stuff. I don't know which one they gave me, but
hopefully it's easier to give meds to dogs than cats.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I can tell you from experience, giving cats pills is the least enjoyable thing ever.
I bet. Do you have to burrito them?
So with
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, I know what you mean. So with Clementine, that wasn't even an option. She's our rescue cat who was hit by whoever had her before us. No, that didn't really work with her. Because if you try to hold her still, even now she hates it. So, no, you just kind of have to buy the like expensive meds that come in a syringe, and when she gets angry, you have to squirt it in her mouth and then immediately let her go. Basically.
Oh wow.
That's kind of where we're at.
The other one that's hard to do unless you're like super bonded with them, hamsters. They don't want to take it. So you have to burrito them.
I can only
and
imagine.
like hold them in a hand towel and just their little faces like ah.
That sounds hilarious but adorable when I think of a small hamster.
Yeah. Well, you know what I've realized, if you get a young hamster, like a baby little, as young as you can get it. First of all, American hamsters kind of suck because they've been overbred, but if you get them young, you should do a little bit of syringe feeding with them so that if you ever have to give them medication, you can.
Yeah.
They've associated this with like, oh, my weird giant mommy is giving me food.
Yeah, my the 3 cats that I raised from kittens, I can give them meds fine, but yeah, it's the rescue one. She was already 4 years old when we got her, and yeah, I can't really trim her claws still, for one. There is nothing she hates more now to this day than her paws being messed with. So. Yeah, I've not quite figured out how to do that effectively. As she's staring at me right now.
Okay, I'm gonna grab. Wait, hold on. Let me ask Cal something.
Also, hi Bright Spare. I did not realize you were here.
Okay, I cannot do habitat repair management stuff on an empty stomach, so I'm going to switch to playing a video game in the background.
That works.
Which is understandable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, hey, I'm doing some work at the moment, but good to see you.
Okay, good to see you. Hello, welcome in. Oh, we're on TikTok, even though nobody wants to watch long form stuff. So like people come by for 2 seconds, and then they're like, "I don't like this." It's weird how fast they leave, though. I'm like,
it's funny.
What would make you stay? Like, what do you need? Like, first of all, why did you click on it? Like, I mean, like, were you expecting an explosion or something? Like cartoons run by with like Mickey Mouse hitting somebody with an anvil? Like, what were you expecting?
I don't know. I've never used that app, so I cannot.
Well, so maybe what they're expecting or looking for is an instant sort of identification with one of the voices speaking. So, like, this is a person that sounds like someone I want to listen to. Would be my best guess for like a reason to explain
that. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. I'm probably not that person. Well,
I don't necessarily think it's that either. It could be a part of that, but it could also just be that the discussion topic is maybe not sufficiently stimulating for them at the time.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, it's TikTok, so who knows?
Yeah. Well, that TikTok is fascinating, by the way. Like, it is a mixture of like decently unpacked information that people do share, but I don't know who the people are. So like what I would rather know is like, why are you saying this? Like I'm like, that seems right, but like, how did you get here? And you don't really get to know that, which isn't awesome. And then there's also like a decent amount of like straight up misinformation. There's a lot of it actually, where people are like misrepresenting their life stories or like their body of knowledge or like why they're saying something. So it's like it's hard to tell people's motivations on there, and especially because like you can get money potentially if you're successful on this thing. I don't know how that works, but somehow you can.
Yeah. I don't know. I never downloaded it kind of at this point out of just I don't need something else, so I don't know.
If it's something related with advertisers and monetizing
your
audience,
similar to how people do it with YouTube and other things, but in a lot smaller form.
There's
Also,
go on.
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was actually right. Lilith knows a bit about this. There was a book that I'm going to start reading because I watched the channel on YouTube. It's this German philosopher, and he wrote a book with a colleague called You and Your Profile, and it goes into the nature of prophilicity and sort of how it forms relationships with general peers. And it's some pretty, I don't know, it changes the nature of interaction between people
Right. I
because it's
actually
almost
was
like,
talking
oh, go on.
about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
with Jane earlier today and sent Jane the video that you had seen and put in my intention. So just letting you know that
Felicity.
yes,
Yeah, I've
yeah,
watched that philosophy. He does Carefree Wandering as his YouTube channel, but I guess that's his book in theory. But I've heard him talk about it through some of his commentary. Like I've watched, I don't know, maybe I've watched like maybe not even 10, but somewhere between 5 and 10 of his videos where he's offering commentary on current events through his philosophical model. And yeah, like I would very much like to learn more about that in specifics and not in, well, I guess in the abstract is really what I'm saying, instead of when he's just doing commentary with it as a tool.
I'll always remember the example that he gave that I notice this when I go out with some friends now and then, right? And it used to be like in the early 2000s, before I guess smartphones were around, people would go to say a concert, for example, or any big event, and you'd be interacting with the subject of the venue directly. But now it's always through the medium of a phone, right? Like people almost like have this expectation that you have to take photos, right, to then put them on your profile, to record your experience, to sort of signal it outwards,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Okay.
And yeah, and then he said it's sort of like obviously there's relations to the celebrity culture around that whole thing, apparently.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah. He's talked a little. I think he already talked about celebrity. I need to maybe watch some of his stuff in earnest, or well, no, I've fucked watching stuff. I'd rather read at this point. Yeah, and maybe after I get caught up, I watch that video and see if I can look at his book a bit. But the
Right.
profile thing, huh?
I think you've got lots of other things on your plate already in terms even of study, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm actually like committed to some stuff right now, that are about like trying to generate language to guide people into doing as building guide, haha, instead of doing as arriving. Like, how do you break a pattern of using doing as arriving language to the exclusion of doing as building language, and how do I coax people into not talking themselves out of doing as building and returning to a doing as arriving conformity. So I've got a bunch of books I'm reading on that right now, or to advance that and see if it will work, which I think it will, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, like, for the sake of discussion though, like, it is really interesting that like we have to have these profiles online, and I don't think I'm either a brand or messy, because that seems to be the dichotomy that's emerged, is like, be your messy self. It's like hard to categorize. I'm like, I think I'm actually super easy to categorize, but the categories are abnormal. But that doesn't mean it's messy. It's still organized and makes sense if you understand who I am. I still make sense of as a person. I'm not confusing. By not being a brand, that doesn't mean I'm confusing. It's a very weird dichotomy that's slipped into people's speech and beliefs that I've noticed, that like, and also brands are not, or it's also, it assumes that brands are like neat and clean and organized and tidy and make sense of things. No, they don't. Like, they don't make any sense. Like, Coca-Cola is telling you to buy them to be happy, and it gives you diabetes.
I think they're
Also,
they're
brands
flexible,
are
they're fluid, right?
brands effectively exist for the purpose of whitewashing the companies that the brands become the face of, right?
Right.
They're like the mask that a company puts up so that you don't think about the company,
Yes.
the specifics of the reality of the company.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's a tactic.
Like I was
So
going to say, the marketing of the brand is simply the entry vehicle to the service that the company wants to get you to buy, and then it will always change and be fluid, relevant to what the current market trends are and what they predict
exactly.
that people will want, right?
Exactly. We're still relevant to the youth. Young people still think we're cool and hip and edgy, even though no one says cool and hip and edgy. Yeah, that's a really good point. And then a lot of what's happening right now is like branding going out of hand. And whenever I hear a complaint about the current system from kind of old guard, it's like, oh, but this doesn't match our branding. We can't do that because it will confuse people about what we stand for. I'm like, well, I don't think you stand for anything. I think you, first of all, standing for something at this point means you're not responsive.
Well, so even that standing for something, that's doing as arriving language, right?
Yeah, exactly. You stand for it because you've already won in this domain, and now you stand there with your trophies guarding your fort or whatever. When that's not what I want.
Right. It's like saying you've demarked a part of the map of reality as yours, and you need to like put up a flag, right? Like that's
Right.
what it is. It's the same
yes.
mechanism for flags.
Yes, exactly.
Branding.
Yes, exactly. And I don't like. I need to put down a flag. People, I don't like them. They're making everything really fucked up. So if somebody says like, man, the answer is to have our flag somewhere else, I'm like, no, it's to say that putting down flags like that is a human behavior that we need to study and then address, because it will create conditions that do not, allow humans to be okay, like that are not compatible with human needs. So if you're so interested in showing that you've won at the flag competition, putting your flag down competition, I'm like, you've lost the point. You've like you've lost the ability to interact with something. What you've lost is like a capacity in and of yourself. There's no competition outside. You're losing the capacity to respond to something in a way that it needs to be addressed, because that's a trait of you that you're losing. So there's like, I guess that's an interesting thing. There's like two senses of loss there, right? There's like the doing as arriving losing, and then there's the doing as building losing, which is when you actually like something on you dies or is compromised so that it doesn't function anymore. And we are scared of that because that's a reminder of our own death, like that parts of us will be gone that were once there and we will not get them back. Or if we get them back, it's going to go through a whole other process, and it would have been better to have never lost them in the first place. That's a really shitty thing that like sometimes you can try to make sense of it and try to make the change feel rewarding, but it's not about that. It's about the fact that you are going to have to deal with loss whether you like it or not. Loss instead of losing. Maybe that's the thing. There's loss and then there's losing. Like losing can be about the doing as arriving, but loss is about death. Or just simple change, but it's we're not in an environment that's conducive to responding to our needs. So if our needs change, why would we be in a better position? A lot of times that puts you in a worse position, and that I think is also why people conform, is to try to obliterate the needs they actually have and replace them with the needs that the conformist group says that can get met. So you try to have those needs met instead, but if those are not actually the needs you have or a human being has, that's going to be a problem. And now you have the problem that Eric Fromm is saying, is that like you can't accept yourself because you are not yourself, so you look for acceptance from the group instead. That like the only way to know if what you're doing makes any sense is to look at them, because there's no you to check. There's no you to be like, is this making me worse or better? Because you don't even know what good is for you, because you don't know you. So like, yeah, the whole thing is, it makes a lot of sense, and that's what I've been adding to my model lately is that, but it's a big ass bummer too, because it means like all we had to do was take seriously the fact that human beings have needs, and you can't just make them up. You can't just like get a weird old mythical book and say, well, your needs are whatever this mythical book says they are, because they're not. And that's what we're finding right now, and they're trying to legislate on that, particularly at the great cost of a huge group of people. But I do pay attention to women, because they our bodies have needs that they don't, and our minds have needs that they don't, and are trying to enforce them. on everybody, and it's really bad. And because it'll also kill people, because they're like, okay, if you are in a disagreement about what people's bodies need, you can kill people quite clearly.
I think, in my opinion, that's what happens when you get too far down the rational end of things. And I think that's like a byproduct of the society that we've gotten to live in, that has been created in the last, I think, a century or two.
Do you think it's rational though? I mean, I'd beg to differ on that.
Well, what I see, oh no, it's irrational, sure, right, in effect. But what I mean is rationality, quote unquote, as this concept of, overcoming nature, going beyond, right, like
Well,
these
I would call that
needs.
transcendence. I think it's a
Yeah, yeah.
transcendence thing, and that's why the Bible goes along with it. That's why the technocrats both go along with it. They want to transcend needs.
So there was like a rationalist movement at some point, for example, because I just learned about a cult that is an offspring of that movement.
Yeah. I wonder, you see, now I've not read the Bible. I know for certain that obviously people like to co-opt and twist things from the Bible, but then a part of me wonders how much of it, or what it has to say, is probably in line with certain natural principles that are healthy for human existence. But of course, those sorts of things tend to be stifled down in public discourse, right? Because it doesn't match political agenda.
Well, so the answer there with the Christian Bible specifically, including both of the books, the Old and New Testament, is not that much.
Yep.
Not that much. So that right. I find value in the Christian Bible in a Gnostic sense, where you read Lucifer and Jesus in opposition to the God figure that's talked about within it. Right. And then the Bible becomes a very good learning about what abuse looks like book. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of stories about this is why you should never let somebody tell you that whatever they say goes, because then you're going to be defending the murder of children. Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that book and any other book that's like a mythical tome probably all have some general advice and some things that were very specific to pleasing the authority figures at the time, and also pleasing people they wanted to recruit. So it's probably a mixture of things that people tend to believe. But it predates our consciousness of the scientific method by a lot, and is not able to investigate its own claims. It just says, well, because this is the book that makes the claims. I'm like, okay, but why? But who? But where did it come from? And so whatever it is, it's like kind of like things that I believe it's things that people's brains will generally accept, or else it wouldn't exist. And that doesn't mean that those things that brains will generally accept are actually things that the brain should accept. It's just it does tend to.
I would also say that just if you have any conception in your head of what Jesus is like, the way that modern Christians will say Jesus stands for these things that are clearly positive to everybody, then you already know basically the few good things that are actually said in the Bible, because they have taken all of those and made them into their brand, right?
Yeah.
Like they use Jesus as a brand ambassador.
Exactly. That's great. Yeah, he's a brand
ambassador. I mean,
right.
You say that,
and
then
so
also
even that form of Jesus is a cutting down of all the text that's actually in the Bible about Jesus. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I thought it's also ironic that nowadays they kind of, I remember when that inauguration sort of thing at the church happened, right, with that one bishop, and then the response from your types in the Republican Party and those supporters, what it was like, it's like they kind of openly started talking about how empathy is a bad thing, right? And then how Jesus' teachings kind of they've completely even dropped the mascot banding. They don't like to pretend, that it's useful to them anymore. Now they'll just openly say that it's bad.
Yes. Yes. Which is terrifying, by the way, because they don't like empathy because psychology took away their throne. So psychology replaced priests, or the priestly class. They don't necessarily have priests, they have like pastors or whatever. But a psychologist, and the psychologist says not only that, but the traumas that specifically happened to you are your responsibility, not an authority figure who's going to rescue you. So it gets you out of triangulation. It makes you less manipulatable, potentially. I mean, obviously the therapist can be unethical and himself or herself try to manipulate you, but in general, what it does is give you anti-manipulation training. And obviously, yeah, a church isn't going to want you to do that. Like, so this has been contentious for probably as long as the history of any organized religion. Is that like, and psychology or any proto-psychology came up. The priestly class was supposed to tell you what to make of the bad things that happen to you, instead of you being guided by somebody who's ethical to figure out what to make of the bad things that have happened. So their idea of empathy is saying that, like, well, no, empathy means that you're holding back somebody's punishment from God. You're interfering with God. So you can't have empathy because God judges the wicked. You don't judge the wicked. God judges, and the priestly class, and it's usually a man for some inexplicable reason. So like they're trying to wrest back the narrative of control and exploitation that they get as authority figures, because therapy says that you are an authority, and the therapist has an authority on like concepts that can help you to become an author of your next steps in light of how you've now situated the traumatic things that have happened to you. So that it's like, there's something that was said recently by a feminist that I respect, who is like saying that like there's something sacred in saying that you were hurt, other people witnessing it and realizing that it wasn't your fucking fault.
Yeah, that's true.
So they don't want that to happen. They want you to think it is your fault, or it's whoever's fault they tell you it is, so that they can weaponize you against yourself and other people, which is what we see happening. So they don't want empathy, because then they can't weaponize you against all of those people that they want to use you for. Yeah.
To me, that's like a very, I think down to it, it's almost like it's still a very human thing, because I mean, it's just simply a human thing, right? Removed from any spirituality. Because when I think about, for example, I didn't grow up in an evangelical family or any of the sort of like separate creeds that you guys have in North America, right? I grew up in like an Orthodox religion family, and all I can say is, even though they were like, yes, you should follow Jesus' teachings, you should do this and do that, it was very much do as I say, not as I do, as I am, right? Or there was no questioning of that. And that's no different over there. But it's like, it's interesting that as I've gotten older, and now I've been kind of in a bit of an inner conflict in myself around like, how do I structure my approach to spirituality, for example, right? Because on the one hand, I do get some principles from certain, I guess, even priests, for example, priestly figures from the past that resonate with some empirical principles that I've seen in psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, right? And then it's a big question of, who do you trust, right? Do you trust people that you see on the street, online? How do you learn how to discern that? You know, who's trustworthy?
Well, that's I agree with where your line of questioning is going. So because I think that's exactly what you need to ask. So like they're saying you should agree with me, or not even agree with me. Do as I say, not as I do, because I have transcended what you're doing. Do you see what they're saying? So it's a claim about their own transcendence. So that's what you have to watch out for. Like, don't trust people who have claimed they've transcended. That's not, you can trust people who have worked really hard on something and offer you a model and then you can check to see where they got the model from. So I think people should be challenged to situate why they know things, not like citations, but just a really, honest, as best as you can do it, autobiographical retelling or recounting of how you got to where you are. They don't want to tell you that because they're no longer, amongst you, and they're supposed to have found the mystical, magical way to be transcendent. So, it's in a ring. It's like, oh, well, if you knew, you'd already know. So you're not one of us. You don't have the esoteric knowledge. So it's a claim on esoteric knowledge, which is manipulation. It's intimidation, and it's using you to give them social power, which is the power to move people around. And I think there's some people that genuinely think that is the same thing as having power in reality, that if you move people into your cosmic play and you make them play their roles, and it doesn't matter what the reality is, but that's just simply not true. And that's the problem that we're having right now, is that people are dissociating into this fantasy, hoping that that will be good enough and that you don't need to have reality, or getting to the point of conflating the two and thinking that social reality and reality are the same. But they don't have language to tease this apart. And it is just a human thing. But there's people that have exploited it. And my concern is that all of these books are just people bureaucratizing that exploitation. And there's nothing more fucking to it. And that it's taking credit for all of the wisdom that we also naturally do.
You're right, that we do naturally have. I have a general question for you, just in regards to this then.
Yeah.
How do you come to know when you have when you know something, when you've mastered, well, not mastered, let's say when you've learned something sufficiently that you know it is real in your own environment, in your own perception? Like if you want to learn a skill, right? I'm just so, I feel like I've been so severely damaged my whole life by people who at the time were, let's say, in stronger positions than me, right? Of domination or whatever, where they've always questioned my own belief around who I was, what I've done, right? And there's always been appeals to authority that they know better and they're on, how do you build yourself up to get out of that system, to trust yourself?
Okay, this is what I think personally, and I'm going to base this off of dance, right? So I'm moving like, possibly have 100 books on dance, right? I still don't know if I'm any good at ballet. I still don't really know that. I'm like, maybe I don't really know where I'm at. I kind of know vaguely where I'm at because I've started training my eye. And then so you won't ever know how well you've really got something, even when you work on it really hard. But after a while, you'll have a sense of like, I'm pretty sure I can guess with this amount of certainty. So what you're not trying to do is saying, I know. You're not even saying, I'm ready to guess. What you're trying to do is figure out how certain are you in a percentage? Like, I'm like probably 80% certain I can make a decent guess of how good I am at ballet, and it's been like 20 years and it's just like I think I can finally up my percentage, right? My percent and it's like a self-reflection thing, and the only way to up your percentage is to expose yourself to more of it. So like, are you actively learning about it? Is what I would do instead. So if you need a proxy to get out of that more confusing problem of trying to like give your like confidence score, basically, like if you're doing statistics, if you want to get out of that, then just be like, well, if I want to get better at understanding how I fit in and how knowledgeable I am, I need to continue to study this, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to situate where I am relative to the thing, because I don't know enough about it to be confident in my guess about like how good I am at this. And it's really hard when you're not given a lot of feedback from a mentor. It's really hard. So if you're doing something more academic, like I'm not in a good boat. Like I'm describing stuff that I feel pretty confident I'm doing good for a layperson, but I still would be really scared to see what somebody in academia thinks of me. But I mean, I've had some positive responses, but who knows? And
as you say, you wouldn't know until you expose yourself to that, right?
Exactly. And getting exposed to that can be really challenging. So I'm like, for example, I do have an opportunity to talk to somebody who's got a master's in neuroscience, who's going for their PhD, who has expressed that they have a theory of autism that is epigenetic. And I mentioned mine and they said they agreed. So I said, oh, can I please talk to you more? So I'm going to have a meeting with that person just to discuss. So that's like me testing to see, well, how good is my work when I haven't had a lot of feedback. So if, especially, right, so if people in your life can't give you meaningful feedback, and this is the problem with being kind of precocious, is like your peers can't give you feedback, your teachers can't give you feedback, you're not even supposed to be doing that. It can be really hard. But the antidote to all of that is to keep studying, even though you're like, who do I think I am studying? Because I think what holds us back is we think, well, maybe I don't have the proper, maybe not credentials, but like maybe I haven't earned being able to study this. And I think that's bullshit. But once you're studying it more and more, it's like your eye will get trained more and more. And then you can start to turn that eye back on yourself more successfully and kind of guess like how, and again, you're not guessing from the perspective of that eye that you've trained. Like you're not guessing how good do I think I am. You're guessing how good do I think my eye is. Like here's what my eye is seeing when I look and turn it back on myself. How accurate do I think that eyeball is now?
Yeah, that's
Does
what I
that
was
make
asking
sense?
initially, right? Yeah. It's like, how do you develop your skill of discernment
Right,
ultimately, isn't it?
discernment, 100%, 100%. And I think it's reading. With most subject matters, even ones that are physical like ballet, I still think it's reading. I think it's trying to create models that work. So diagrams, like make a journal, do diagrams in your journal. Everybody that I've looked at their journals that was like a respected genius weirdo, and they usually weren't very socially popular, by the way. So many fucking diagrams. So like, try to test
Visualize.
your visualize. Yeah. Test your understanding by translating it into some sort of a metaphor visually, translate it into other forms so that you're practicing your how do I say this? Your your
This
ability
reality
to
testing.
reality test your reality testing, and it is a good stand-in for another person because it switches your perspective. So then you're like, okay, if I let go of the model I just used, what are some other models I can use so that so you switch the metaphor. So this is the thing that Lakoff and Johnson talk about. You lose the problem of metaphors hide things as well as reveal things about the thing you're using the metaphor to describe. So you want to switch the metaphor so you have a chance to reveal some things that your most even the best metaphor can hide. So the one that you're using. So putting the information into other formats so that you can reveal things because those formats allow that trait to be better revealed.
Yeah, I suppose that it's to cover for any blind spots, right? In a
Correct.
sense.
Yes, exactly.
Because you said that and it reminded me there's I saw somebody else mention this today, a bit of a synchronous congruent moment, but the god of thought, right? I know it sounds unrelated, but supposedly he invented language, right? Or the hieroglyphic system in, in theological Egyptian thought, not for the sake of constructing language, but for obfuscating it and making people forget. I'm not sure why, but that's what somebody said to me today, and it's just it lined up with what you just said. So that's curious.
Yeah, right. And that's what we're looking for is
I guess
that
wait, I
synchronicity.
guess it could be a thing of if you think you know what something is and you define it, you label it maybe, it is very easy to then not focus more on it, and it might be also something else, which then throws a
Right.
spanner in the works, right?
Right. And then so then it might be something, yes, exactly. And it might be part of something else. And then we're talking about abstract reasoning, which we should learn in school before we learn any sort of math, but we do it in reverse. So people don't learn like abstract mathematics till they get to university, which I've read Eugenia Chang complain about in her books, which I think she's just bang on right. So then by using the metaphor, it allows you to jump levels of abstraction. And also then you can, so if you think of the abstraction
A
field as being
shortcut.
like
Yeah.
three-dimensional, right? You go up levels of abstraction, then you're like, wait, what else is in this category? Can you then drill back down and arrive at where you're at, or maybe you're at its neighbor now? And by looking at that perspective of something related, and you start to see, well, why is this different than that? Why is this different than the thing that I started with? Then I went up abstractions and down. So you're starting to be able to like move through a plane of reasoning that allows you to learn about adjacent things, and those things will also inform how well you know the thing. So like I know more about jazz than I would have if I hadn't I tried to do So You Think You Can Dance. So I learned other dance forms, and then I was like, oh, that's an adjacent thing. Or like learning about other sports, I'm like, those are adjacent things. How is ballet different than that? So, but I had to go up and say like, oh, movement arts, physical movement arts, competitive movement arts. Why are we different? Why are we the same? So these questions also let you flesh out the world. And then by doing that, you start to build a model of reality that you can handle in your brain. It starts from places of knowledge. You use metaphors to bridge, and you can bridge to these new concepts. You're like, oh, this is like this. This is like ballet in this way. Here's the bridge. And now you start to populate your internal map of reality with things that you feel confident are real and that you can ask other experts. So if I were to map something, I don't know, let's say I figured something out about baseball and I'm like, oh, that's similar to what we do in ballet. Now I don't have to ask the ballet person because they don't know. I can ask the baseball guy and he'll know. And so now you have more mentors and reference points to do reality testing with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way to do it, the experimental way, I guess. It's how I used to do it as a kid naturally, I feel, but I think something about the whole doing its building versus arriving model that obviously some people pick up and some people don't growing up. I feel like the people who do the whole doing is arriving, you know, as you say, they don't teach that in schools that way, right? They tell you that you have to do it. What they don't tell you is that they teach you a specific system, but to fit you in the role that they need you to be in relative to the position that you're at, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm like realizing now. It's like these limitations of thinking what you are, you know that they're not true, right? But it's a habit that's built in, you know? I'm trying to get back to how I used to be, where I used to sort of like study things freely and I had a lot of stamina and I just simply wanted to do it, but now I'm struggling.
Oh, they're draining you. That's why you don't have stamina to do it. And we're also having, okay, we have a triage problem. So we're like, oh my God, people around me don't know the basics. Do I need to fix this? Just like you would hope while you're asking for these nuanced questions about reality, a mentor would come in and help you with this reality testing, which is asking the person about ballet or asking the person about baseball. We need that. And right now, we're preoccupied with like the basics. Like, is that hurting people because they're hurt? And they're like, no, that isn't that. We're in 1984. Don't believe your lying eyes. Like it's just like we're there. So you're not able to work on what you want to as much. And granted, like there's a little freneticism when we're like younger. I guess we have too much energy in a sense, but we also have so much energy we'll dance on like broken bones. Like we're like, you know, like that's a problem. That's a problem in ballet until you're like 27, and then it's
But you
like,
know what I think
not
the
a
main
fucking
problem is, like you said, when you have almost these tools to analyze yourself and the world, similar to what you said about psychoanalysis, you're resistant to things like manipulation. But the thing is that when you're a kid, you kind of might not realize that soon enough, and then you can be caught, and then they can sort of take those tools away and try to teach you different things, right?
Right. So you're reclaiming the tools that you think you need probabilistically. So I would say you have to trust yourself first, and you have to cultivate yourself. And this is what I'm getting from Eric Fromm's The Sane Society, is that the problem people have is they can't accept themselves because they are not themselves. It makes no sense for them to accept themselves. They've become not themselves because getting to be themselves was made impossible by this deeply unfair system. And rather than process how deeply unfair that is and say, well, I'm going to get what I can anyway, where can I find it? The library, great. These people will teach me, great. I'll go there. And it sucks. It sucks that our environment isn't meeting our real needs. But the other option is to pretend you have the needs of this group that has conformed to the scraps.
I mean, I can say this what's preventing a lot of people from, I guess, choosing themselves is, I think what it is, like I've been kind of finding out today, it's grief. When you choose to go into the grief of your own experience, maybe that of your family, of like having been forced in this reality, it's and then you have to say goodbye to, I guess, the self that isn't you. And for some reason, that's very difficult.
It's because it's a safe thing. You did it for safety, and it felt like this was the only way for you to survive, like physically, in a really deep sense, that like it's this or nothing. You're either this thing or you're dead. And when you realize that you don't die, that nothing, they're not going to kill you for being weird. There may have been times in our history where we did, and we will, and certain people we still might, but you can actually have like this is what Virginia Woolf talks about. You can have a room of one's own. You need a place that's yours where you get to be yourself. And the only way that works is that place needs to be populated with things you can study, with things that you're learning, right? So your study is you. Does that make sense? So
It
what you
does. It
study
does.
is you, and that's who you should relate yourself to more, and then you'll never be in the same level of grief because you're studying your grief. And
I guess what's funny is, Jane, is that I guess I've been probing the waters. I've been dipping in and out a little bit because I can say that the last several few months I've collected a lot of tools, resources, books for that purpose, but I've just not made that full commitment yet. Like again, because I think like living in this space that I'm starting to build for myself is still that me who is not me.
yes, well, and
I just haven't done it yet. Yeah.
you're building that's discernment too. So you're saying, and it's okay to have bought the books and not read the books yet. This, I think that's really, really important. And a lot of people will call buying books clutter. I think that's disgusting. But like, so buy the books, look at the books, think about why it's hard to get to the book. Now you're using discernment, because then you're asking questions about like yourself. Like for some reason they've taken that ability away from you, the collective. And a lot of it is like our time is being monopolized, our resources are being spent poorly, we don't have a chance to have the time to study. So then it's going to be about, you need people around you that will help you to study. And that may be what we're doing here, is just giving you the motivation of like, that actually, yes, that matters, yes, that matters that you read that. Maybe you need a lot of people to tell you, yes, that matters that you read that, because you telling yourself that is potentially not something a human being can do.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
you
guess
just
it's sort of like the visual, or sort of like the way that I see it is, it's like I'm kind of in this very, very, very dark existential void without any ground, right? And all the wires are very messed up. It's as you
Yeah.
say, I know that in order to continue to learn to do certain things, you need like a leap of faith, is what they would call it, right? Belief that things will work out. And so maybe perhaps in my case, I need a lot more people than I have now to believe
Yes.
that, which I can build,
Yes.
which I can find. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think you're very bright, very, 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 very. And whatever you read probably needs your mind on it stat, because we don't have a lot of people interacting with books successfully to begin with. And the fact that you felt called to it, and I already think you're a bright person, I think you select very good things for you to engage with, and that the insights that you will produce will be completely new. And insofar as they've been said before, they clearly weren't said successfully. So somebody needs to take another crack at it, and what might as well be you. Like, you should take a crack at it. It's not always might as well be. First, that's to say that there's no reason why it shouldn't be you. But the all other reasons it should be you is, I think you're very smart. And I think that it's likely that you have an insight that's very important. That if you can spend some time cultivating it, you'll quickly see that that's true. So it's almost like that's my hypothesis. So if you wouldn't mind testing that for me, that would be great.
I will try. Yeah. It's these, I guess maybe they're useless. It's these worries of, but the future more in the sake of just, well, the things that I'll learn, the things that I'll be able to do, will that be able to help people? Will that be of value? And I know that in itself is a bit of a trap, because to judge your own value based on how you can help and serve people, by definition, I think degrades your own sense of self, right? Because it shouldn't be contingent on that.
Right.
Well, it's
So I feel like you could
there's two
very
models of
easily
that.
shift. You could shift that thought very easily by simply including yourself in the people who are helping.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
So your
You're a
study
person.
will always help at least one person. It will always at least help you, right?
Mm.
And then if you're more successful, then you can help others as well, and that's an improvement. That's a state you'd be even more happy about. But the state where you spend your whole life learning about reality and no one else gets to learn from your discoveries, that's not a bad state either, right?
Yeah, I suppose at least I'm not damaging reality through, I guess, blindness in
Yeah.
a sense.
Well, and you're sensitive to it too. Like you're very concerned about making sure you know what you're on. And this is okay. This is why you're going to be fine, because you're doing is building, and I can hear it. And I've been talking about it over and over again. I feel very confident you've got it clear. So if somebody's doing is arriving, they become insensitive to the environment, because they're like, I have to get to that goal. And they wreck their body, they wreck the environment, they wreck other people, they wreck what other people are working on, they wreck things that people worked on the past. Like Gaza, they bombed, like hundreds of thousand-year-old buildings or something. There's some not 100,000, but like like real, like
Yeah, I guess.
crazy old, like tens of thousand-year-old buildings. So like you're able to say, okay, I'm building this, I care about this, I know what it's like to care about what I'm building. I will make sure that the other things being built around me that people care about for very good reasons are not getting wrecked while I work on this. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And like, even if somebody says, again, this is why we have to watch out for manipulation. Oh, you're breaking my building. You can look over there and be like, no, I'm not. Wait, what? What are you talking about? Because that's a controlling person trying to make you move, trying to make you abandon your building because they've learned doing as arriving to self-regulate. I honestly think I just unlocked like the key to the species, but never mind me. But like, that's what's, you see what I'm saying here? So like,
Yeah.
you that's discernment too, being able to say like, okay, this person is addicted to doing as arriving. Me sitting here working on this is freaking them out. So you can categorize that feedback as a doing as arriving person, like panicking and having like a denialation thing is what I call it, where they want you to move a certain way, you don't, then they try to start manipulating you.
Well,
And
I guess
outside of that,
it's a response to an existential crisis, I guess.
yes, 100%, that's what it is, because they're all in on doing as arriving, man, and if that isn't it, they're fucked, and they are fucked. So like, they need to come to terms with that, and that's not your responsibility to make everyone come to terms with it either, because you have work to do. That's what Kyle sometimes gets on me a little bit, because I do too much of that. And he's like, you have work to do, you're not getting to do your work. I'm like, shit, I'm not.
That's the thing, right? I guess maybe this is just a idiosyncratic thing for some people, like myself, maybe you. I sometimes maybe sit and think too much. Now, like, because I'm quite, I don't know, I'm maybe relatively slow, and so I use the time to strategize. But sometimes maybe I think for too long, and I should just do.
Sure.
But that could just be a skill that's been underdeveloped because of the circumstances we talked about.
Right, and the circumstances are pushing you without any regard for you, right? So the problem is we're ending up in places we really shouldn't be, because we're being pushed by other people who say, well, it's really important to move people around, so we're going to move you around, like what happened to Lilith. Oh, you're not supposed to do this, so I'm going to move you on your behalf. I'm like, bitch, don't touch me. Excuse me. I'm not reinforcing. I'm not going to move into the position that you put the little players in your dumb play. This is reality. Stop trying to manipulate me to make reality look other than it is.
And it's also
I also just
treating you as
highlight
irrelevant as well.
Like,
absolutely.
from my very basic understanding of biology, the human body burns about the same amount of calories every day. And so if you're having a day where you are just thinking, quote unquote, just thinking, or just sleeping or whatever, that means you are doing a huge amount of internal work with your brain to burn those calories. And so even though you might not be consciously aware and like intentionally going through things and building models of reality, I think it's almost has to be true that you actually are. And so, like, when you have a moment of clarity and things click, it is in part because of all those days where you've just been thinking, right?
Yeah, that's what the psychoanalyst would say. That's being worked. Sorry, go ahead.
Important things. I'll just say just thinking, as if thinking isn't, the thing that makes humans different from every other animal species, right? Like,
Yeah,
literally, we're named Homo sapiens sapiens because it's so important they put it in our name twice.
It's exactly what Jung and the psychoanalyst said, that it's the unconscious working things, right? While you're not paying attention consciously to stuff. Well, this is true, obviously. Yeah.
And actually, even more, it is your shadow thinking these things through. So there are things that you can't allow yourself to value thinking about because of how much your persona has taken on the shape of the society and what it tells you to be. But your brain ignores that and thinks about it anyways, but it does it subconsciously so that you don't get angry at yourself for spending resources on it.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to me personally.
I've become very aware of it in even my dreams recently, as I've been noting them down in my journal, and it's yeah, I'll get to it. I think it'll be a shift. It'll happen, and maybe I'll build it over time, and I'll obviously kind of those shadow qualities they described, they'll slowly become more integrated. I can feel it. I guess the progress over the last 2 years, I can see it too. Some small changes.
Yes, and that takes so that takes a while. I often relate this. Not a lot of people have an experience of losing like It's a good metaphor to have, or if you've seen something.
Jane breaking up right,
it's really
breaking
interesting.
up right now.
You're a little bit.
Oh, my dog. It's my dog. My dog's barking. Merlin, why are you barking?
Okay. Give
Okay.
him a bit of attention, and then if you could restate
It's muting
what you're
him.
saying.
So I was saying that, like, okay, so if anyone's ever lost weight, what
Mhm.
ends up happening is you don't notice it until you've lost a significant amount of weight. So other people might notice it before sufficiently to notice all of these changes. So that's why they'll have people take a picture, because it abstracts it enough away from you that you're like, oh, that's a different thing than what I've been looking at every day. Oh, wait a second. So like in any change, it takes a while. And I mean, for me, it was like ballet too. Like I didn't really realize how much progress I made until one day I looked and I was like, oh, that's very different now. I'm different now. Okay. And that's like difficult for the human mind, and I don't really know why to do. So you probably have made more progress than you think you have in almost all cases. And if you're still made progress is the wrong word, the traits that you have adapted and taken on board, where your brain isn't really able to work from them as easily as when they are more established, but you're already working from them physically, like, and like in terms of like what you're already working from them, but your brain's ability to notice that they're there even though you're working from them is way slower. And I don't really know why. I don't have a good way to, yeah, right, like Jamie's saying, like everything I'm doing is progress, is this core motivation. Yeah.
My rudimentary understanding would make me think that the reason is that the sense of self is built over an extremely long period of time, and because of that, it is resistant to internalizing short-term changes. Right? So, like, you've been good at ballet for a tiny percentage of the total history of you that your brain is working with to create a sense of self.
Yeah. This is good. Yes, I think that's
Yeah,
probably
because I
true.
suppose it's like,
Yeah.
was it you guys who I saw this from? There was like somebody did an article of, I think, the people who were suffering during the AIDS epidemic, several decades back, and they talked back to some people who they were convinced that they would die because, they thought no cure would be found. So a lot of them went into some crazy credit card debt, right? They basically lived as if they would have no tomorrow. And then when a cure was found and they were still alive, they obviously were saddled with the debt, but then they were like, what now? So I think it's what you said, Lilith.
Right.
It's like it's about thinking about the bigger
We're
picture,
predictive.
right?
It's prediction. Yeah, we're I think that's what it is. Like I do believe, I think predictive coding is right about how our brains work. And it's pretty well established. So like there's different, the theory of construction of motion is on the predictive coding model of the brain. So we're saying that, like, well, how does a thing make a prediction? You have to care about probabilities. You have to care about percentages, the way that we're talking about right now. We must be caring about that. Now, like,
Right.
how concretely we can experience that, like, subjectively, I don't know, but I think descriptively, like, that's what we're doing.
Right. And this is why I often end up talking about there being this disconnect with, like, the therapeutic process of learning more about, what you really are and how you should be treated, and the sort of internalizing of those facts. And it seems to me that that gap is only met through sufficient lived experience backing up the claims that you've learned through therapy. Right? You actually have to get experience with people valuing you while you have boundaries to internalize that you have value just right while having boundaries, rather than your value only existing in subordination to another or whatever you're working through.
You've changed the relationship with you and other things. And so, like, a good example, so if somebody loses weight, one way for them to realize they've lost weight is to put on a dress or a pair of pants that used to fit them really well. And they were like, oh, what? Like then your brain gets that one real fast. Even if the dress is a good example, because The pants, you can feel them on your legs a bit better. The dress, you're going off of feel and look a little more, because like they usually have a bit of give. So you're not just touching the fabric the whole way. But that also, you're just like, oh, I look different. My arms look different. My legs look different. My torso looks different. So but the way that you figured out you look different is the dress that you wore before. You can't do it with the new dress. You can't do it with go ahead.
So in both circumstances, it comes down to actual reference yourself to an external object.
Right.
Right. It's that you have to actually interface with an external object and see that the new model that you've been building is true, or update your model. Right. Your physical model doesn't update until you get that interaction with an object that tells you it has to update.
Which is really good. If we don't have that, we can be delusional.
Right?
Yeah, but it's and so this is okay. This is why mental illness can be devastating when it's a delusional disorder, because the person can't grab an object in reality. In fact, likely will avoid the object that will let them know that it's not true. So so we have a problem, because that's why we have so many people that seem stupider and stupider in like the MAGA cult. Not to, again, like, this is tricky, because somebody on my TikTok was like, you're being mean to them. Like, no, I'm being descriptive of the problem that we're all vulnerable to in one way or another, and we need to watch out for.
Talking about stupidity and intelligence as ability to effectively and accurately interact and interface with reality around you.
Yes.
Rather than a mental capacity, right? Because you're not saying this person has a mental capacity that's going down because they're in this trunk, but that their capacity to interact with reality without delusion is being damaged.
Yes, damn it. Yes, exactly. Undermined, damaged by the group, and there's methods that's happened. I had somebody like saying that I was demonizing people while I was talking about Erich Fromm's work, which is the guy who in 1955 tried to understand how all that happened, and they used the example of like, this is what people said about the Jewish people. I'm like, that's certainly not what they said about the Jewish people. Like, Erich Fromm's analysis is definitely not what happened there.
It's very ironic, because like the Christian part of the MAGA cult literally demonizes people, as in claims that people are demons.
Yeah. Somebody else had to comment on that, because my whole video is explaining that, like, I don't think that some MAGA guys saying, like, do you seriously think half the population is evil because they don't have empathy or whatever? I'm like, no, we don't think you're evil. We think you're in a cult. That evil is a word that you would use because you're religious.
That's so funny. That's another recursive moment. It was the guy who did the investigations. Oh, who did the witness? Sorry, who recorded the witness testimonies during the Nuremberg trial. And I think what he said at the end of it was, his quote verbatim was, "Evil, I think, is a lack of empathy."
Yes, he did. And then he talked about the banality of evil. And, like, yes, it is. It is. The thing that we are referring to with evil, I wouldn't use evil. I would say that lack of empathy comes from certain conditions, and people can be more or less vulnerable to becoming part of that condition. And I think we've learned that condition is a psychosocial phenomenon that creates conditions of mass psychosis, which we have to be very concerned about, because psychosis just means you're not in touch with reality anymore. That's what it means. So we're saying a mass contagious behavior starting from a cult leader such as Trump, or other people who are, seasoned cult leaders in Christian cults that are involved with him, or techno cult people, whatever. So it's a seasoned person like that who has that pathology, and apparently we catch mental pathologies like we catch the cult. So
I think I like the idea. I like the idea that I heard in a spiritual video about like dreams and whatnot. It's in a sense of being careful not to get swept up by the dreams of others, because once you kind of get into those realities, you're done for. Playing by those rules and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, and then that's why I'm reading The Sane Society more fully, where Erich Fromm is talking about this conformity problem. So he sees it as like conformity can instill this lack of empathy into a dangerously large group of people.
Yeah.
They conform to not having empathy. They've conformed. They have adopted a mode of behaving that says, instead of looking to see if something is actually helping somebody else or helping the world or helpful or what it is, they're saying, am I like everybody else? And if everybody else is doing the horrible thing, they're going to do it.
Yeah, but I guess that's true. But I mean, I think let's just say it like this, right? Like when I volunteer or I meet some of these types of people across the street, right?
Hmm.
They sort of, they either would say that this is just how things are. They may have a sense that it's not right, but then they think about like what they have to lose, how difficult it is to like, change in their circumstances, what they have available, or the circumstances they went through have been too painful, right? All these different justifications
Yep.
kind of come up. Yeah.
Yeah, but the reason why they have to do that, and this is what I think Fromm is right, is because they need the acceptance from other people because they can't accept themselves because they are not themselves. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
true.
fundamental problem, is they're not themselves, and that's why those problems are so pressing. If they had cultivated themselves, or if they start to cultivate themselves, they will have abilities, and people will accept them on the basis of those abilities. So I get accepted in this space, I hope, because I'm working out these theories, and you need somebody who's working out theories. I get accepted in ballet to the extent that I did because I studied ballet. I get accepted in hip hop to the extent that I do because I'm good at rapping. So your acceptance has to be built on who you are, based on like what you do and have cultivated for yourself, that you have, like the discernment that you've been talking about and the knowledge that you've been talking about. That's what it has to be based on. Otherwise, you don't exist. You are this this thing that needs other people to tell you we accept you because you look like us. And the drive to, I've started to think of this as like a drive that can't go away. And you either have the drive to do reality testing, or you have the drive to get acceptance because you are conforming. So your only reality testing is, are we all following the script?
Oh no, Jane! I just heard you say like you have to get acceptance by like acceptance from the group that looks like you. And I'm just like, oh no, this explains so much of the online trans movement, right?
Interesting.
They are trying to build a new identity for themselves that they can value, because they can't value themselves because they aren't themselves. And so they have tied acceptance from others as a woman or man or whatever their specific gender desire is there, into being able to like themselves, instead of simply freeing themselves from the gender cult and becoming themselves.
Just become yourself. Just do the self things. Do the things that are you.
Right.
You must do the things that are you. And if somebody else walks in and says, don't do those things, as people who do those things, I'm like, okay, well, do you have an argument for why I shouldn't be doing this? That says in objective reality why I'm hurting other people or causing problems. And you need to listen to those sometimes. I'll listen to them. Shit. Like I'm actually pro-social. So I'm like, okay, what is it? All right. Oh, okay. Well, there isn't one. Or sometimes there is, maybe there is, and we need to talk about that. I can deal on those circumstances. But usually what's happening is it's more, people say you need to move because this play has to continue. And I would argue, from a feminist perspective, I'm at a deeper level of deconstruction of the play. I'm at the level of like, here's where the cult really is, and you guys are still in the cult. So we can argue about that, which gets a little more in the weeds. But you see what I'm saying with that generally? Like, if you're building something and somebody says you have to stop building that, I think it makes sense to ask them, okay, why? And then you may realize that they don't know what you're building, and they're using a different model entirely. And I may say, well, I think your model is wrong, and I think your model is the conformist belief that social reality is real.
Yeah.
And some people, I think, like what I just said was kind of a mouthful, but I and could be more elegant if I were a more educated and adept person in this. But I think I'm broadly on it. But some people would even say like, oh, that's too complicated. It can't be that complicated. I'm like, well, it is, and that's why we're screwed. It's the actual model is more sophisticated and complicated than what we typically are talking about, and the needs are more simple than what we're talking about. The needs
Yeah,
are
because
yeah.
it's beneficial to the people that I guess do the doing as a arriving system, to say that being is a simple affair, right? Again, the whole notion of this is how things have always been, right? These are perennial truths and whatnot, right? When people are literally trying to live differently, and then they're giving an example of an alternative lifestyle, and that's sort of like where the whole conflict, I think, starts in some ways, right?
Yes, and we're still competing for resources that are not rewarded based on need,
but are based on money. So
Mhm.
I think that can't be separated from this. So if somebody says, I need to be a dancer, and then they're, I don't know, they're Janet Collins, and ballet is in America is only white people, and she wants to be a black ballerina, she has to figure out a way to be a fucking black ballerina. But in our culture, then it says like, therefore, if you become this great ballerina, you're supposed to get money, and you're supposed to get power and privilege and whatever. And the reason why it's so hard for her to go there is because money and power and privilege are supposed to be the rewards for white people. So she wasn't going to get the ballet position because the white people are supposed to get rewarded, period, the end. So we have to say like, but she did become a phenomenal ballet dancer, but she became a ballet dancer because she needed to be a ballet dancer, because that's who she was. That's who this person is. That's Janet Collins. Okay. But we have a
Yeah.
society that holds that from so many people for bullshit reasons, and we need to know that, and saying that this person's entitled to rewards. And then you have rich people buying things they don't even care about, going to ballets they don't care about because they want to go to the opening night with the fancy photographers.
Yeah, for them it's all about the trends, right? The posing.
Yeah.
There's
So
a concept. Well, I was just going to briefly mention there is a concept that I'm getting into. I find it very interesting to analyze. Just desire in and of itself, right? I'm looking into sort of the concept of eros and how it started off, and then to the present day how it develops, right? And I'm finding very interesting this thing that kind of comes across, comes through again and again in human history of like, I guess the notion of movement, right? Motivation, stimulus. And somehow it always seems to like lead to, well, it has connections with death, or at least to death in some sort of way, right? And then people sometimes in their delusions can go in these spirals, right? And they'll do things very destructively, almost like seeking that release. And like often they don't care if that release brings them annihilation or people around them as well, right? And so then I kind of was just thinking if, desire can kind of move us to do some pretty irrational things sometimes. I can say that from personal experience. So then I'm just thinking, is it by essence a negative force? Is it a neutral force? Is it just benign? Is it something to sort of be managed? Yeah, it's just something that I find interesting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think most of our drives as humans are on some level pragmatic. Whether they get used pragmatically is a question that is answered by our society. And we know right now that like what we are capable of doing is not what we're getting to do. Right. So,
Yeah.
and that's the problem that we have, is that we have a drive to do what we're capable of doing. And I think that's very interesting, but it's probably both pro-social and also meeting our own needs. I think we're so dynamically social that if I figure out how to get to do what I wanted to do, I figured out something about the world that I can tell other people that want to do that. And because I can empathize, I know what it feels like to want to do it. So then you'll have Misty Copeland, a contemporary Black ballerina, does a lot to support Black and brown dancers, young people who want to be dancers and active professionals, right? While being a principal dancer herself. So she's probably gonna retire kind of soon, but that's basically what, and maybe she'll be the next director of ABT. I could totally see that happening. So she's invested in people who had the same want or have the same want or will have the same want, because she knows how that feels. So if you follow the things you want to learn, I think it makes you pro-social because you know the pain and the relief of getting to pursue that.
Yep. The pain and the relief. It's funny you say this, Shane. It's a funny coincidence. I just noticed there was a girl on YouTube that I follow. She's just a small channel, sometimes like shares her. But is there like almost the theme of women, or must be something about ballet? They get into ballet, right? The nature of the art, and then not to say that they all burn out, but they get out of it for various reasons.
Yeah.
And then it kind of like it points them into really sort of contemplating life and like very deep themes. It's something that I've noticed a lot.
You know why it is? I in my opinion, it's a very embodied art form, and you're not dissociated from your body, and so then you start asking some other questions because you've had to engage with what's really there in your body a lot, And you've
Mhm.
also engaged with what you wished was in your body a lot, because the standard is very high. So I think it gets you into a very philosophical place when it comes to like the questions of being, questions of existence, because you've had to try to deal with your desires physically not matching reality and trying to get it there, and seeing people who did have that, and that it's a little bit of luck and it's a lot of development. Like you're like, oh, if I hadn't had the luck of this person helping to develop me, I wouldn't have gotten into that company, or I wouldn't have gotten to that school. So you have like a really clear view of that.
And I would contrast it with a lot of like male dominated oriented sport where it's very disconnected from their bodies.
Yes.
That their framing is about like pushing past your limits and not taking care of your body, right?
You're just a vehicle to get the ball into the thing. Like you're not.
So
really
this is the reason why I couldn't get into any sports. I never found them very. But then I wonder, like, I know.
Go ahead.
Go on. Yeah.
Well, this is a meaningful thing for me to add. So I'm a flexologist right now. I'm basically triaging a lot of people's injuries because they're older people that are coming in for these stretches. The men, oh my God, their injuries. They've ground their labrums into confetti. They've torn entire tendons off. They don't realize that their hip isn't moving because it has severe arthritis. Like they're not in their body at all. And by the time they get to be old, they're like gluing into this shape that they can't get out of. I'm like, oh no, okay, what happened here was you dissociated when you're about 10 and you are trying to now reassociate with your body. The women, I do not have the same problem. The women have had a bunch of doctors tell them that their symptoms aren't real. So we have we have a split here, and I think it's sports. They always play sports. I had a young boy in yesterday who's like 14, and he's very tall. He's doing basketball, and he's doing, I think, is it football? Might be football. And I was like, okay, well, do you know what your psoas is? Because he hurt himself. And I'm like explaining him, like, all right, you need to go home and look up what your psoas is now. You need to know what this is right now. You're a smart kid. You need to be smart about your body. You need to start learning this. They don't teach them. They don't teach the boys. If I said psoas to any 14-year-old ballet dancer, they know exactly what I was talking about right off the bat. And in fact, they tell me which one is tighter on them. Seriously.
That's crazy. I didn't learn about it till I was 24 because it was related to some postural things, right? And then I realized why is my posture sort of unnatural in some ways.
Yep. I'm literally holding a book right now. This is American Ballet Theater's National Training Curriculum, the Healthy Dancer, ABT Guidelines for Dancer Health. And these are in all, like, this is at all of their summer intensives that they do. They have photos of young people showing the stretches, who's at risk, why it happens. Oh, look, here's the page on the psoas.
What's so funny to me is like, okay, so like I've been sort of thinking about what kind of I obviously need to work on an exercise routine. I feel like my whole life I've never really addressed that, and now it's becoming clear that you can't escape not obviously working with your body for obvious reasons for the sake of health. But I've never found anything that really appeals. But what visuals that I had in my mind, which now is like, oh, this is very similar to ballet in some ways. I know that I need to do, well, what I want is I want to make my body a lot more flexible. At least I know that I have like characters in like the stories that I write, right? And if they're martial figures, for example, they're usually very flexible. They're very limber, right? And obviously then they still discipline themselves to do like lots of exercise every day to keep themselves up, right? To slowly improve their abilities. And I'm just struggling to find a structure around that.
Yeah, and so, okay, so all of this, we should be asking questions about what am I? Like, not where am I necessarily, though sometimes you do have to ask that, but we should ask a lot more questions about what am I? And I think that dance is a really good idea for all of us to do because it makes you ask, okay, well, what am I? Am I moving my arm? Okay, well, what's my arm? Okay, well, what is moving my arm? Okay, well, what do they want me to do with moving my arm? Okay, what am I doing? So you're doing a lot of reality testing. There's a mirror in front of you, and you're checking and checking and checking, and then you're checking if you know how to check. So when I talked about like developing your eye, that's the first eye that I developed was for ballet. And if we advance that into other other disciplines as a metaphor that you can learn from, that's great. But another thing to do is like literally just take some dance classes where there's a mirror. It doesn't have to be ballet, it can be hip hop, I don't care. But take a dance class where there's a mirror in front of you and you have to check yourself.
That's so funny. I'll be honest with you about something. It was a few years ago, before I left, I left Ireland. I had my whole situation. I was reading a manga about ballroom dancing, right?
Oh, nice. Yeah,
And
ballroom's great, by the way. Love that.
and I just that whole story, because I think it's not even just about the dancing itself, but the things that it puts you through, right? I just found it really like I was just left with a feeling that, man, maybe I want to try this. I was considering dance classes for a time, forgot about it,
Yeah.
got swept up with other things, but
Highly
yeah.
recommend it. Highly recommend it. I think that would be like, one of my greatest feminist teachers mentioned it. She's like, I think what people really need to do is just go dance. I was like, you know what? I think you're right.
Hmm.
And that's part of like the problem is dance seems out there, right? But our culture doesn't prioritize or center this as meaningful. This thing that I'm describing, dance is a way to get there. That's very like ever present, that's accessible, and that has codified it a lot. So it's a
Oh, for
good
sure.
one.
Yeah. I'll tell you this though. I mean, like, I think as I've been slowly doing my therapeutic work, I think just obviously being able to accept my emotions more. Now and then I've sort of tried doing the thing of breaking into dance, right? When I feel good, obviously to get moving.
Yes.
And maybe that'll, if I keep doing that more, you know what it was? It was just, I guess, a weird trigger trauma thing that happened. Like, I remember it was like your school dances, right? Or even like your version of a prom or whatever, right? And I remember I dared to be a person who wanted to get all funky on the dance floor, as it were, right? Or I just really enjoyed moving. I didn't have any kind of technique or anything like that, but I dared to do it. And it was just a spectacle for everybody to laugh at, right? And like that sort of
Terrible.
like
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, no,
push me
exactly.
into.
And that's but because you weren't conforming, because ballet and dance, or not ballet, but I think of it that way. But dance is not the normal thing for the group to do. So they're like, oh, you're not doing the normal thing for the group to do. I'm like, perhaps the normal thing for the group to do is to be cut off from their body. And the reason why they're making fun of this is because it's one of the things that cuts you off from your body. If you don't dance, it cuts you off from your body. So it's like they're so trapped.
I guess
They're
they're
so
calling you
trapped.
stupid. I guess they're calling you stupid for not
Yeah.
like conforming.
For not conform, they're calling you stupid for not conforming because they can't accept themselves, and they need the acceptance from the group, but you don't. And that's what's so brilliant. Even if, so they're saying you need the acceptance from the group because I need the acceptance from the group, and to make them feel that that's the only way, they will now manipulate you to say like, well, if you don't get acceptance from the group is going to shun you. I'm like, well, you invented the group, so why does any of this matter?
Yeah.
Right? So there is no natural consequence to you dancing on the dance floor. It's just the group being like, well, we based our entire life on conforming to the group, so you're not conforming to the group, so we're going to make your life hell. I'm like, well, you're doing it. What do you, I don't, right? It's hard to get past it because they are doing real physical things to you. Like they are making consequences happen. But the
It's
only
obviously
reason
different when you're like 16 and 17. You got
yeah,
no
of course,
clue.
they're not thinking it through, but honestly, it's contrived, right? And they've already had something instilled in them that's super unhealthy, that's going to hurt them in the long run, and they're just trying to displace that hurt onto you, when in the long run they're going to be the one. I mean, I bet the people that made fun of you, unless they broke out of it, they still don't know who they are. Like, fuck that. Like, like you get to know who you are, and
Yeah.
that's great. So that's awesome
No,
that you
people
wanted to
change.
dance.
I thought, actually, I wonder, have you ever thought this? Like, let's say in like 10 years, 15 years, if it was suddenly announced that there would be like a school reunion or whatever, would you go to it?
I think I would. It'd be very weird, but I think I'd go.
I think I felt like I would, because I mean, you live once, right? It's an
Right.
experience. Maybe there'd be something to learn from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I went to a weird, if I went to my junior high, I'd be more interested in that because that was the gifted learning disabled program. I'd be most interested in going there. My high school I'd be interested for different reasons, because it was a weird fundy attempt to be fundy school. It wasn't really, but we got evicted my freshman year and it got very complicated.
Right.
We got evicted because the president / I guess the president of the board embezzled millions of dollars. They laundered money through the school. So that school, and that, oh god, that anyways, it brought more fundies who saw it as a sinking ship, and they had like a savior complex. Anyways, it was really weird. I would love to see how that is. I know a lot of the people I went to school with deconstructed, but they weren't that deep in it. Thankfully, it wasn't like supposed to be that kind of school. It just started to resemble it because it was the era and the whole like, you know, Jesus camp thing was happening at the time.
Right. Okay. Jesus.
It was fucking weird. It was weird, man. It was very weird. We were trying. Me and a couple of my friends were trying to get out of the school by our junior year and telling our parents, and our parents didn't believe how bad it was. I'm like, I think we're. Hello.
Well, I'm glad that you got out of it when you did.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, they weren't gonna get me. They hated me. God damn. Like they hated me. I asked too many questions.
Well, that's how it'd go, right? And you know what? I really respect.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you were
I'm gonna
breaking
ask
off there for a
questions.
second. Yeah. No, I mean, I
nothing.
just,
Yeah.
I really respect that. I don't know. I really admire that. I was talking a bit with my auntie a few days ago, right? She's the only person in my whole family who kind of doesn't buy into the delusions that my parents went through, all of that family drama bullshit or whatever, right? And then I kind of find out in our discussion that in some ways she went through some very similar circumstances during times that in some ways maybe were a lot more economically difficult. But she, perhaps, you know, being a woman, so even having a harder time obviously than me by default in that culture. Like when her parents tried to force her to do something she didn't want, right? She blatantly didn't conform. She asked questions, right? And seemingly she's always had this sort of streak, right? I find that really admirable because I know that it's like blind confidence. I know that they, you know, I'm sure like yourself, you've had your own doubts and you've had your own like fears at times, but still the fact that you push through it's a model to follow. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I had help to do that. Like my parents weren't in that weird cult or anything. Like that's why it was so hard to convince them. Like I think my school's being taken over by a cult, or being exposed too closely to a cult. Very weird. Like how was I going to communicate that as a teenager? And like it was very weird. But my parents are pretty okay. Like I mean they're older. They had kids late, so they're kind of have some of the boomer shit a little bit. But it's doable. And nobody thought that I had to be some type of thing because I was female. Like I got to just be me, and I didn't get the attention that I think would have been helpful about autism because they didn't believe we had it, which is ridiculous, but it just was what it was. Like, so I ended up, broadly speaking, very healthy. And my mom told me about self-actualization when I was like 5, or maybe even younger. I remember it by the time I was 5. So I was like, I'm gonna self-actualize, do, and like I think that's what we should tell people.
Hell yeah.
Like,
That's at least a bit of a better model.
And
Yeah.
It's a start. It's a really good start. So I don't know. So whatever I've got going for me, it's definitely not like watertight, but I do think I am mostly okay and I can find stable people to talk to. But there are a lot of people who are kind of up now. So we're around a lot of like really traumatized people and it's hard. Some of it's difficult is like even if you don't interact directly with the abused person because you're not an attractive target anymore or whatever, or like you're too difficult. I'm too difficult, I think is what it is, which is great. Be difficult. The hordes of people who have like the mass psychosis problem or like have absorbed the personality of the cult leader are still going to be around, and it's really hard. It's really hard. I think my flaw, if I put it in, maybe not flaw, like let me think about this. The thing that I don't think I will ever be good at, let me put it that way, is like deconstructing and being like loving to people who are in a cult. I'm not good at that. I don't want to be mean to them, but I don't want to interact with them because my work is too important and I don't want them to fuck it up. So I end up being really
that's a bit of a
dismissive.
no, I hear what you mean, and it's a bit of a liability, right? You, in a sense, to your own work.
Yes.
But that's a bit of my own kind of conflict in some ways.
Exactly.
Because obviously I have this, you know, I had the situation of the cult people being in my own family, right? And that taught me the experience of maybe in theory, right? Like you can reach people. Maybe you can be a model that sort of like pierces that delusion. You know, you show them a little bit of light as right, and then maybe you offer like and you show them some tools, and maybe that's as much as you need to do, right? You need to give them an out or an alternative, and if they walk it, that's good. If they don't, they don't. And I don't know. I'm happy to shoulder as much like pain in some ways in that process, obviously within reasonable bounds. But I think it's just, I don't know. I feel this as a sense of obligation because so much of the
Yeah.
world is drowning in some regards, right? People.
Can I mention something with that too? So I think you're right. So I'm going to comment on something that I think is specific. The cult that I believe we are in, like the most meta version of it, is about males and females. And I think just as you have a drive to participate in that, I have a drive to distance from it because people are going to try to use that to reaffirm the main cult that I have to get us out of, where it says
no,
women.
And I agree.
Yeah.
It's not just women.
Cool that
It's
you
just
feel that way.
it's an other. It's the other group, right? They need a scapegoat.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
No, 100%. So yes, exactly. Yes. So it isn't just women. That's true. But women are definitely like their main metaphor. In my opinion, I think it's
A
their main
juicy
metaphor.
target. Oh, let's put it like
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, because we give birth and then we have to we breastfeed and stuff. You know what I mean? So like, oh, you're a nurturer now. I'm like, well, because what our tits have? It's ridiculous. But like, they're ascribing a trait to displace regulation onto women. So if somebody's coming at me and they're like, you need to regulate me, I'm like, I really, really don't. You need to regulate yourself. You do need to co-regulate with people, but I'm a builder building a thing. Stop trying to interrupt my work. So I get really like, nope, that's not happening. But that's not they wouldn't even push you that, they wouldn't have that instinct to do that to you because they respect your work because you're male in theory. And obviously there's depending on your race and like all the shit. It's again getting
Well, the fact
it's
that
not the only one.
I get you, but you're right in what you say. Yeah. It's because
Yeah.
it's all about reputation and recognition, right? How big your flag is, right? In a sense, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. So then you're able to get it in the right quantity. I need to push people to let people build because they're going to try to stop all kinds of groups of people from building because they're supposed to help them regulate or be forced to help them regulate. And that's why I have this concept of denialation or patridennialation. When you say, I'm not doing that, I have my own needs, and the person starts to use any and all manipulation tactics to make you do anything, not even to make you meet their needs, because now the new need is that they're having an aggressive negative response to that, and now you have to fix that by moving any way they want you to. Now it's just about control. That's my model of what's happening there.
Oh yeah, because
so
they're panicking. Yeah.
100%. So I need to approach that differently than you would, and it's interesting to hear what you're saying. And also this talks to like the right-wing thing of like, oh, we're feminizing society. I'm like, you mean the people that you told them they couldn't self-regulate or co-regulate are starting to self-regulate and co-regulate? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I
so
do.
that's
So
what I
I think this is where the approaches are different. I think you're right to do as you're doing. Like I think women and maybe sort of like this whole, whatever you call a yin polarity, maybe the feminine side of things. I don't know if these terms are correct, but like maybe that side of stuff just has to be, it has to be let to exist, right? To not be pushed down or repressed. And the whole problem for guys was that just being endlessly controlled by fear, pushed away from connecting with one's body, right? Just being a part of nature, right? And this
doing as
rush.
arriving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Trying to
this is
arrive
what.
at transcendence is my argument. Like not only are they're trying to arrive eternally at the greatest place to arrive.
Yeah. It's like these billionaires, right? That they basically what they want to transcend this planet. They want to transcend death, right? They're just freaked out. They're really, really freaked out.
Yep, they don't like being a person because they don't know what it is to be a person.
But then, because they're rich assholes, because that's how they grew up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the reason why them being a rich asshole is really important here. I was calling them a Deviterium husk. Like they have nothing inside of them because of money. Because they can buy things that are meaningless to them, they never developed meaningfulness. The person that should have the thing should be the one that actually understands the meaning of the thing. That's just like a basic principle. They buy things that they don't understand the meaning of, and then they break them, and then they think everything's broken. They think everything's broken. I'm like, no, you break things, Elon Musk. You break things because you don't actually have a deep core of meaning related to the thing you're able to buy. You were just able to buy it because you're able to buy it. That's it. There's no deeper profundity to it. And so they think that the world is broken and they need to escape it. But I'm like, no, you're just bad at things. You're trash. So you're making trash. And if you give away all of your resource, your stolen resources to be able to buy things, then people could buy the things that they're actually good at. And then you would see the world as a very good place indeed. So they've locked themselves into this, and they've locked us all into it. And I can explain it till my face turns blue, but I don't have the money to put it out like that. I'm going to try to make a book and read enough that I get this model strong enough. But I didn't make the model. The model just is. I'm just poking reality. It's just there. It's just right there.
We were born into it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my reality. I think the good thing about me is my reality testing is more intact, and I don't know fully why. I can make some guesses, but I don't. It's hard to do a guess on that because it happened developmentally.
I think it's because I can't say it in scientific terms, but sort of like the feeling is like you've thankfully not been, in metaphorical terms, polluted as much, right? Because what I see now, ever since like the typewriter came out, or maybe the printing press, there's been an exponential rise in language and words and text being used less as a full exploration of one's experience and more as just noise, right? People saying whatever opinions that they want, and
right.
Relative to how much you unconsciously like bury yourself in those streams, right? The way that I see it is just you pollute yourself so heavily, and maybe you're less clouded than most.
Well, it's tricky. I think maybe it's self-reinforcing. Okay, at this point, I have a pretty good. We were talking about this earlier, like the percentage of certainty that I have, like my confidence of like how well I know what I'm capable of and what I'm doing is gotten higher. And what I'm having a higher percentage of certainty or confidence in is that I'm good at modeling, I'm good at reality testing. Those are very well developed. I work well with language, which at this point is necessary for modeling reality and testing it. And that people don't treat me like I am, which is really weird. And now interacting with
Like
people
the TikTok
one-on-one.
thing that you said,
Yeah.
right? Why did they just not hop into your thing? Well, it's just like a quote. I remember a quote that I read. It's like everybody's like a book, right? Most people only look at the front cover, only a small selection will read the acknowledgements, right? And the introduction, and then maybe only on, like, you can count it on one hand how many will actually read the content.
Yes, right, which is alarming. I've even seen somebody on TikTok go off on a book that they clearly just read the cover, and the cover was a metaphor. It's very scary. And they took it literally. It was very scary. So, okay, so the problem then, so my society says, oh, Elon Musk is the smartest man ever, so that's why he has billions of dollars. We give the smartest people billions of dollars. We give the people that have solutions billions of dollars. I'm like, okay, I have solutions with the reality testing problem. Where are my billions of dollars? Nowhere. Okay, not that I wanted them, because that's stupid. That is a really dumb fucking system. No, but also no, that's not true. In order for me to be rewarded, I would have to not be doing what I'm doing right now. In order for me to be rewarded, I would have to conform, and I'm pretty sure that conforming does not allow for me to be like this. I'm pretty sure at this point. I tested it. I've gone online. I messed around a little bit. People kind of like me, kind of don't, whatever, but they don't know what I'm doing. So it's not true that people will recognize that somebody has this ability and then reward them with status, which would make sense. If we were, status should be temporary, for one. It should be dependent on conditions, for two. And it should be agreed upon by everybody else that, like, this person has a better read on this, but they're going to explain it well enough that we can be confident that they got it. Okay. So if somebody was going to give me any position, which doesn't exist in society, to make this contribution of the work that I've been doing, they would have already did it by now if it existed that way, which means that it doesn't, which means we're in really big fucking trouble. So that means that there's a bunch of people probably who are having some of the insights that I'm having, but they also are not able to get to the position where you'd want somebody to tell you that, because that position has been occupied by people who everything is meaningless. So
yeah,
and
it's, as you say, the banality of evil. That's what stops it.
Yeah. and and just to like logic this out, if everything is meaningless to that person that has the authority and power to control the lives of people, and everything is meaningless to them, they will hurt other people and be antisocial. Period. You have to be able to model
Oh
really
yeah,
well.
yeah,
To be
because they're
pro-social.
bored. They want to have some.
Who knows what they want? I mean,
Yeah.
nothing makes sense to them. Their brain is soup. Their brain is like, puree.
True.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what's in there. It'd be hard to see the part. So they don't have pro-social instincts because they should know that they're too stupid to be in that position. They should know that they don't care enough to be in that position. They should know that they bought their way into that position and there's no meaningful connection to it.
they don't have the pro-social instincts because they've not habituated themselves to be in a social environment, and that's
Right.
the
Well,
problem,
and
right?
they're for whatever reason, they're the wrong person, and we've made a system that makes that person try to take the role that we would only in a sane society give to the most pro-social, best at modeling human beings that we currently can find, right? And we
Yeah,
would keep
it'd
trying to
be
find a better one.
rewarding excellence.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Well, and then if that were true, the person that occupies that position would want to leave it as soon as you found the next person who can do it, and would want the person that's better at that than the okay. I would want the person who's better at it than I am, younger, to be. I have to tell them everything because they have more time and they have more research. And then it wouldn't just be one person either; it would be multiple people. So ideally, it would be like most things would be by congregation of some sense. So because then you have multiple. So it nothing we're doing makes any
It's
sense.
how you're describing sort of like in the ancient past, you'd have like, masters and their disciples, right? And
Yeah.
like, go to
Yeah.
find one that you jive with. Yeah.
Yeah. Like ballet dancers aren't dictators. They dance for a couple of years. The height of their career maybe is 10 years if it's a really, really good one. A lot of people it's more like 5. I mean, they still have a really wonderful time and can move on hopefully healthily. Like that's the dream. And then you don't cling to the time when you were the best at understanding this model and displaying it in a way that people were really happy about. So we have a really, really, really big problem. And I think what I'm able to do then is I have a slight I have a positive feedback loop where I'm like, okay, I think I'm doing really good modeling. I'm pretty sure my modeling says that people who do good, really good modeling don't end up in the position where that modeling can be shared. Am I in the position where the modeling can be shared? No. Okay. Can I get to the
That's
position?
Yeah, because it's about change is most easily done on the inside, right? You're still not
Yeah.
yet on the inside to affect it.
Right. And I don't know if I can get on the inside. I tried a couple ways that people told me would work. They're like, oh, you're really charismatic. Go on to these social media things. Do this, do that. I'm like, okay, I'll try
Oh,
to
no,
do that.
it's tricky.
It's not
It's
true. It's
tricky.
not true. It's weird.
Yeah,
And I started
it's
to
not
actually
true.
stop doing it because it felt wrong. And and then people see that as self-sabotaging. This is why I don't believe in what is it? Maladaptive daydreaming. I think people that have to go into their mind like that, and the guy who invented the term stated that, oh, they don't go anywhere in life, but they have all these fantasies about or these dreams about daydreams about being artists and scientists. I'm like, oh shit, that means we don't have artists and scientists. Uh-oh, somebody else is taking their roles because the people that want to do that will be repulsed by the way to get there because the way to get there is bullshit. It's people buying their way in. Why would I want to be working with people who bought their way in? That doesn't make sense. They won't understand. They're going to ruin my buildings. Why would I go
Well,
anywhere near them?
yeah, and they're also just not rewarded or they're stifled early on, like I was, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and when you can't do the things that you want to do, it kind of then becomes something that goes in the shadow and you fantasize about it because what else do
Well,
you? Yeah,
because it's the only safe place to do it. Like if there's no
true.
safe place for you to do it, it's going to why would you okay, why would you try to do the thing that you love and then watch people take it apart for parts and then leave it for the vultures as opposed to doing it in your mind where you can keep it safe?
Exactly.
So we don't have a safe environment to do this kind of work is my current thinking.
Speaking of
And
which, I wanted to ask you about this in my earlier point. Like, remember the story that I said about like trying to dance and people were like mocking me or whatever, right?
yeah.
This also applies to like whether it's me doing art or maybe like writing, for example, right? In my past, I tried making a leap in this system to try to get there, right? Like my mother, who kind of really, really wanted to play it safe, right, was completely conformist to the system because of her own traumas and various things. This one time I tried doing what I wanted, and I said that I'll try to make it work because if I go to this really top end, I want to try to go for Oxford, right?
Mhm.
The reason it didn't work out was, realistically enough, I didn't have the sports at the time, right? And I was a bit desperate to get it to work. But it didn't work out. And then because of that and some other things, I think I just really kind of gave up, or I found it very difficult, right, to push on with these dreams. So like when I find myself in this position right now, being on my own at 27, I know in theory, right, like I'm an adult now. Other adults don't usually care, right? Nobody's going to judge me out in the open if I choose to go to a dance class or to start this, right? And my parents aren't living with me because I left them. And yet, why is it so difficult to drop the story, I guess, that well, I've obviously suffered, like the suffering that I've went through, the victimization in some ways because of who I am, right, in my own sort of marginalized identity.
Yeah.
That does exist, that is real, but still, what is the block that, like, you know, makes it difficult to move forward, to just do stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's okay. The do stuff thing, that's what I'm so fascinated by. I think if you distinguish, there's the motivation to build and then there's the motivation to arrive, and you stop trying to have the motivation to arrive, and you just are like, you know what? I'm just going to have the motivation to build. I'm just going to do those things. I think you'll be okay. I think you won't get a lot of money is my concern right now, and I don't have a quick solution for that, because they're like, well, that won't get you any money, so you shouldn't study it. That's why people told me not to study ballet.
I guess that is part of the big block. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. So we gotta figure that one out, and then I think at this point, well, and then Fromm talks about that too, is like you have to be quote unquote productive, and people think they wasted their lives if they haven't produced value. But the value that we're producing is, we're going to a place where somebody says, I'll buy you for these many hours for this much money. I'm like, well, how do you know what? Why can't you just make an agreement that you'll pay me for how much I produce afterwards? Why do you have to say I'm worth this much money? What if I'm worth 800 times that? That's not fair. So we're already in like an unfair thing, even if we're just exchanging in terms of like value and money and productivity or whatever. So it's already distorted anyway. So you've already produced way more value than you've ever been rewarded for. So even on that metric, I don't think any of us are a failure, but we're being treated like we failed at that, even though we haven't. And it's also not the most important thing, like at all. Like the
It's
important
like, for
thing is
example,
not that.
yeah, if I try to like apply for a job, for example, right, my CV has a job gap, what, 3 years now? Like that's not very good in this economy, for example, right?
Right. But yeah, it's claiming that you didn't produce value during that time, but that's not true. And
And then
again,
what's crazy,
yeah,
because even you'll have people, because it's all, even the accommodation standing, I've seen how it can very often be fake as well. Like I think I told you in my own autism assessment, right? The one time they asked, like, what do I do in my free time or whatever, right? And then I said, oh, I study this specific thing. Oh, I find alchemy interesting right now or whatever, right? And he just straight up is like, how is that any relevant to the current modern day society? And like, I just found it a baffling question, like from a guy who's supposed to
because
assess me for
everything in
autism.
history is not relevant. I was like, what do you mean? How is it relevant to modern day society? Like everything is at least contextually relevant in some way because that's where we came from. Like, what a silly question.
Yeah, but I mean,
But
it
he
was also
meant,
just
he meant,
silly,
how
like,
does it get you a job? How does it make you
yeah,
money? How does
yeah.
that make you socially respectable? I don't fucking know. Like it,
And that's what I'm trying.
yeah,
See, this is what I was struggling with my aunt as well. Like she talks about our generation, right? We're roughly the same age, right? Where we talk a lot about self-development. And see, even my aunt, she recognized that the previous generation didn't do any of that work, which is why our generation has to pick a lot of that. And maybe sometimes it goes in extremes, right?
yeah.
Where we maybe want everything else to change and we don't change enough about ourselves. But I don't think that's how it works. But she struggles. She struggles to sort of see that value of just inherent value in just being, you know?
Yes,
I don't know how
right,
to convince
exactly.
anybody of that. I don't know how.
We're really far from it is part of it, and I think it's the same thing of like they they're saying like, well, you can't be accepted for just being. I'm like, you mean accepted by other people, and maybe I can be, but I can accept myself because now I am myself. So the value of it is now you're yourself and you can self-regulate. Now you can self-regulate.
But some people, they'll see that, they'll think that, and then they'll say, "So you choose to be nothing." That's the crazy thing. Or
Yeah.
I've had situations where you try to just value somebody simply in the moment as they are, right? And it makes me sad that they just don't get it. It just goes over their heads, right? And then that you're not connecting with them.
Well, because they are nothing. So so why are they nothing? Because they are not themselves. That's the whole point. So if they're saying you're choosing to be nothing, I'm like, are you being anything? If you think that being yourself is being nothing, that's very telling. So the status, the approval from other people, the acceptance from other people is the stand-in for the self. Like they don't have a self is the problem. And so
Right,
they're
they
projecting
have the
that onto
mask.
you. Yeah,
They have the
exactly.
mask.
So
Yeah.
they're saying like if I don't arrive, so I'm like, do they feel hollow inside? Do they think there's nothing there to be with, to be as? Because that's what that says to me. And it's like being is about reflecting yourself out into the world and seeing if you ping back. It's like asking the world, hi, am I here? Like, am I in the world? You ask the world this, and then the world tells you where you are. Like, so I'm asking questions about like, does reality agree with me on my theory of the brain? And then they're asking, do the people think the theory of the brain is good or bad? And that's it. It's just like, do I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the people? What should I be doing? I'll do what everyone else does. And I think they do this because it's a hijacking of an arrival signifier or signal. If you go to a place where there's a lot of people, maybe that place is safe and you've arrived at safety. So I think that's what's happening. I think they go to the place where there's a lot of people. And way back when we didn't even have this language capacity, that was one way to tell if we're good, is that if there's a lot of people, if something bad happens, at least we can fight it. There's that too. But
Well,
in
it's also
general,
just the simple fact, probably if there's a lot of people in one place, likely there's conditions to sustain that, right? So
correct.
therefore it must be good.
I
Yeah.
might be home. That's what they're trying. We're a nomadic thing way back, and we had times where we would have a home. So I think they're trying to find the campsite, the place where we're going to swap stories by the fire and do all that good stuff. They're trying to find that place, but there's no idea people. There's no doing is building people there because their whole thing was, well, I'm going to arrive. And that's why the inner ring, they have to keep arriving at a new inner ring. And they just think they haven't found the right people yet.
So would you say then, like, if the whole idea of like putting down roots, right? Or if there was like a city state or whatever, or just like a settlement. Oh, so are the doing is building people more so the explorers? Like, are they the ones who are
Yes.
more conducive? Right. I
Yes.
see.
100%. And that's what's so interesting because it's slower though. It's so funny. Our stories about adventuring and about exploring are like so fast. They're like speed running exploring. But if you actually explore, you're like, what's this? Well, I don't want to get lost. So what's that? Okay, I'll memorize what that is there. Okay, now let me go a little bit over here. So you're like, it's the slowest shit you could possibly be doing. And it's not impulsive. It's not. It's very methodical. If you want to explore successfully, you methodically trace everything out in your map. If you want to get lost, you impulsively run out there. They are lost. So
Yeah,
so
that's true.
a builder is an explorer. Yes. What they are is somebody just trying to make sure they have, like, let me think, what's the best way to put this? They show up at the right place that people already told them to go to. So doing is arriving. You get the
Mhm.
trophy because somebody put the trophy there. You cross the finish line because somebody put the finish line there. They're going to a place that people already told them to go to. Their basic thing is like, go over here because we're going to find the thing that people told us would be there. That's what they're doing. They're not the explorers. They're not the innovators. They're not the creatives. They're not the scientists. They're the people that are doing the basic thing of like, somebody told me this, I'm going to go there. And we do that too, but we're not doing it in this like social skills way where you can invent a whole reality and never test reality. I can't pick up on social cues. like a normal person. So I can't rely that the social cues must mean that there's something underneath it. It must mean that the emperor has on new clothes. It must mean that the Wizard of Oz is all great and powerful. They're going with their social skills to assume that that must be coupled together, that there's a reason why we put the finish line out.
Yeah. Well, what the image that I was thinking is like a lot of these people, maybe they maybe see some things outside of like the settlement, right? And then they come in and they maybe wear the same clothes, and then they'll say, "Oh, I'm an explorer," right? And they make a big show out of it, and maybe it fools
Yes.
some people. What maybe
Yep.
we lack is we're not very good at lying, maybe, or deception.
Yeah,
Or
no,
whatnot.
exactly. And I think liars imitate us, if I'm being honest. Like I think that Elon Musk is a sociopath who imitates autistic people, in my fucking opinion. Now,
Oh
granted,
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
he could be in some borders that I don't understand, but I think he's a manic sociopath who's made himself extra manic on ketamine, was around a lot of autistic engineers because he found himself in a capacity to do that. So I don't think they, or even not even autistic, but just neurotypical people who had
Mhm.
cultivated this better than society has allowed people to do. And so the conformists are like, oh, a weirdo. Those things are useful sometimes. They tell us where to go sometimes. Tell us, weirdo. And then if the weirdo says like everything you're doing is wrong, they get really mad at the weirdo. But like
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like I think this is a culturally understood thing. Like there's like the wizards and there's like the wild, spirit doing this, that, and
Yes.
other. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm starting to get known as. Anyway, I think you gotta go, right?
I gotta go. Yeah, it's like 2 minutes ago. All right. Well, this was great. At the end, I kind of hit the edge of my model a little bit, so I need to work on
Mhm.
it more. So we can navigate, but we navigate around the goal of building an accurate model of reality. And other people, I don't think they're navigating. I think they're just arriving and trying to make sure they've still arrived, and then arrive yet more arriving. Like they want to arrive at an arrival that's the most arrived.
Next time that we speak, will you give some thought, if you can, to the idea of, I guess, self-belief and faith, right? Because I've heard this idea today that, oh, maybe like people say, I don't know how true it is. Like, if we need to not so cautiously go around corners, right? Now you're obviously bringing up the idea that yes, you map reality, right, for good reasons. But how do you learn the difference between good caution and what, fear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyways,
Yes. Yeah. Discernment again. Yeah.
yeah, true. It's discernment, right? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I had proof of power was in here for a bit. I didn't get to look at I never think anyone's in the YouTube comments, and they were in the YouTube comments. Gosh darn it. Well, if you were, I just saw that.
I hope
Okay,
everybody
thanks.
has a great day.
Yeah, me too. I hope people got to clean today too, because that's always good. Okay, all right. Goodbye,
Ciao,
everybody.
ciao.
Thank you. Bye.